As the calendar turns to August, it can only mean one thing. The NFL season is right around the corner. And with that in mind, the Louie T Network exclusives are back like cook crack. Choose from any of the three or all three of the LTN exclusives, Winners and Losers League, Soul Survivor Pool, Weekly Pick'em, all at your fingertips. Links are down in the description along with the video to help you sign up. Don't sit on the sideline. Get in the game.
Who else could it be? With me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. A couple of days of practice have gone by since the preseason game, number 1 versus the Browns. Sunday, there was a glorified walkthrough, a lot of install going on. You know, scout team was very, very noticeable on Sunday. So not a lot to really, dive into there. More so concerned about some of the injuries and a couple of observations on Sunday that we'll dive into and talk about as they pertain to the roster and the impact that we've talked about. We talked about some of these offensive linemen and how they're going to have to be versatile because you can't keep certain guys that only do one thing. So we'll dive into that. Monday was more of a practice that yielded a couple of things, but again, more conversations surrounding injuries as they start to mount just a bit, nothing serious. And I told you guys I had already had a talk with the injury reaper, and he said, look, I can make a deal with you. I can't guarantee you that there won't be a bunch of little injuries, but I won't take anything from you. I've already done that. No more Dan Snyder. I'll be nice. So nothing serious to this point, right? Nothing serious, but a lot of little knickknacks, especially the calf muscle. That's the one that's been, really troubling this team this offseason, or rather this training camp, is the calf. We've had at least 4 guys go down with calf injuries, the most notable being Logan Thomas, who has not returned yet, and we don't know when he will return. And Ron even admitted today that they may be being overly cautious with him, but they can afford to do that this time of the year. So we'll talk about today. Today was a padded practice as they prepare for 2 massive days out in Owing Mills as they travel up I-95 to have a couple of joint practices the next couple of days with the Baltimore Ravens. And then ultimately we'll see them on Monday for week 2 of the preseason here at FedEx Field. So also what I want to talk about too, and while I'm at it, just to kind of set the table, we'll also talk about, remember, this is the last week of training camp. So for all intents and purposes, once we hit that preseason game with the Ravens, that's it. Training camp's done, and now you're turning your full attention to week 1, essentially. You're starting to game plan and install things there. I took a look at the Arizona Cardinals just to kind of see, because they got a new head coach, so I expected them to play their starters, and they did, minus a guy or two. But for the most part, I saw what they were putting out on the field. Not impressed. Feeling really good. Now, no Zachary Ertz right now, but I heard today that he'll be ready for week 1. That's not a good thing because we've had trouble with old Zachary in the past, and we just don't cover tight ends very well, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight. That said, I've got my 7 things to look for me, and I'd love to hear what you guys are looking for during these joint practices with the Ravens over the next 2 days. Obviously, won't be in attendance, but I will be listening to any and everyone that is in attendance to kind of get a feel for what is going on. Those beat reporters will be instrumental over the next 2 days, and really looking forward to seeing how they compete against the Ravens. So I'll give you the top 7 things that I'm looking for with those 2 joint practice days over the next 48 hours. So let's get to camp day number 14, which was Sunday. Again, glorified walkthrough, no helmets, no shells. They're just going out there and installing a few things. You got the backups out there, kind of looking at the opposing defenses and offenses and kind of giving the first team offense and defense some looks as they continue to install some things. So nothing major in day number 14 of camp. We heard from Rivera, and I'll kind of give you a quick synopsis of what he had to say. Washington made a roster move on Sunday, releasing punter Colby Wadman, who kicked in preseason game number 1. We all knew that was a formality. He was only kicking because Tressway had a little bit of an issue with his back. He did hold in the game, as we were told by Rivera, and we saw with our own 2 eyes during the course of that game. He was out there to keep that operation intact, but he was not going to kick. Wadman did a solid job. Now he is back on the streets, and we signed Caden Smith, a tight end. If you recall, he was with the Giants, came from the University of Stanford. So you should know Caden Smith just a bit. We've seen him a little bit here in Washington as he's been a member of the Giants for a couple of years. So bringing him in, again, camp body, the tight end position has been a little banged up. Logan Thomas, sustained a calf, been out for a while now. Obviously, Amani Rogers went down. They had already brought in a tight end a while ago to offset that. But then you had Logan go down, and then you had Curtis Hodges tweak something, I think it was a week ago in practice. He ultimately came back and was fine. But, when you get to that point where you start looking around and saying, hey, how many tight ends we got? That's when you got to go and add a guy, right? You don't want to put extra pressure on some of the guys that you're going to be relying on, like Cole Turner. Like, there was a point where I was like, why is Cole Turner still in the game? Why is Cole Turner still out there? We can't afford anything to happen to him. He's gotten his reps already. He's already proven his point. We've seen what he's capable of. Get him out of there. But when you don't have enough guys to be able to get him out of there, he's got to stay in there for a few more snaps. So bring in a guy like Caden Smith. That'll take some of the burden off of a guy like Cole Turner and allow him to not have to play as many snaps. So Ricky Stromberg, this to me was the biggest takeaway of day 14, was Ricky Stromberg and veteran Tyler Larson, both centers by trade, were getting some action. Their first of camp, by the way, at guard. So we had this conversation, I want to say it was last week, when the unofficial deputies came out. It might have been just before the unofficial deputies, because I think it was when John Kine brought it up. He was talking to Bram Weinstein, and I said, man, John's making a great point about the offensive line and how young it is and how you're going to have to keep some veterans around that you trust to put in the game. And if you're keeping all of these centers, they got to be able to play guard too, because we really don't have anything at guard per se behind the 2 guys battling it out for the left guard spot. After those 2, whomever doesn't win that job is your primary backup, could play left or right guard. But after that, you don't have much more depth at guard. I mean, then you'd have to start playing musical chairs if we are to assume that you're keeping 3 centers, which we know they're not cutting a third round pick in Ricky Stromberg. I'm telling you right now, there's no way in hell. There is unless they're going to trim off fat somewhere else to keep 11 offensive linemen, because to me, you have to keep a 4th tackle, just because of the fact that I just mentioned you don't have the kind of depth you would really like on the interior. You've got to keep that 4th tackle, to me, in order to allow the flexibility of maybe you got to take Wiley and kick him inside and put Cornelius Lucas into the starting lineup. And then you got to have, that last tackle be your swing tackle now, right? So I think it's only reasonable to believe that they're going to keep a 4th tackle. So if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say Trenton Scott is going to make this football team, and give you 4 tackles. And if you're keeping 3 centers, that leaves you pretty bare at guard. So now these guys have to play guard. So it's not a surprise to hear that both of those guys, the rookie Ricky Stromberg and the veteran Tyler Larson, were taking snaps and have been the last 2 days getting reps at guard. I can't see how the 4th round pick out of Utah makes the football team. And I think they're going to showcase so little of him. I don't even know if he was in the game. I might have missed him, and he might have been in getting mop-up duty in the fourth quarter or something. I don't think you're going to see a lot of him. They don't want to showcase him. They don't want him to go out there and put a bunch of tape on for other teams around the league to be able to scout and see. I think they're going to try to hide him, stash him away, cut him, and stash him away on their practice squad and continue to develop him. So, I'm as I look back now, I'm kind of questioning that pick, because when they drafted him, I'm like, this dude's 297 pounds. There's no way you think he's going to be able to help you this coming year. Are you really truly in a position to be drafting a guy in the fourth round that isn't going to help you at all, that might not even make your team, no less? Like, are you really in a position to do? With Ricky Stromberg, there's a chance he could end up on the field. You hope not, but in an emergency situation, he could end up on the field. We've seen it each of the last 2 years where we've gotten to our fourth or fifth center. So there's a realistic possibility that Ricky Stromberg ends up on the field, but I can't see any way that our fourth rounder ends up in the game or even ends up making a team. He's just not ready. So that's a questionable pick. As I look back now, like, I don't know about that one, but it is what it is. Having those two guys getting work at guard ensures you that there's enough positional flex and enough coverage at guard that you're not completely bare should an injury or two arise on a game day, right? Because the last thing you want to have to do is start playing musical chairs with the offensive line because of one or two injuries. We've seen that happen. And this time we don't have a Trent Williams to bail us out or a Morgan Moses to switch sides and hold us down, right? Like, if injuries occur, you're going to need some guys to step outside of their comfort zone. But what you don't want to do is create multiple problems on the line by moving guys around to try to patch up one hole, but now you're creating another one. And you may not be getting the same play out of that player as you would have gotten from them at the position that they were playing previous. So you could be creating two problems on the line trying to cover up one. So instead of doing that, you get Larson up to speed at guard. You get Stromberg up to speed at guard. You make sure that they're ready in case of an emergency. They can step in, and you don't have to start moving pieces around. Taking this guy from guard, moving him to tackle. Take this guy from tackle, moving him to guard, and doing all of this, window dressing when you can just say, hey, I'm just going to stick this guy here and have at it. So it makes sense. It makes sense. You can't keep three centers and have them be exclusively centers. You can't do it. Wes Schweitzer was here for the last 3 years. He always doubled as a center, but he was primarily a guard, but he could always play center. Like, you have to have that kind of versatility inside. So right now, none of these guys really have that. Nick Gates is a center. We know he can play guard, but he was brought here to be the center. Tyler Larson, I don't know if he can play guard or not. Clearly, they're putting him there and trying to, see if he can give them something there. But he's a center. That's all he's ever been since he's been here for the most part. Ricky Stromberg was a center by trade at Arkansas, but he did play guard at one point. So there you have that. And Braden Daniels just isn't ready to help you. So not a surprise. Kind of highlighting some of the injuries and giving you an update on Sunday. It was a walkthrough, so you expect anybody that is capable to be out there. You got to be in pretty rough shape to not be able to participate in some degree in a walkthrough, right? So no Fedarian Mathis. He was pretty sore, as Ron termed it, on Sunday. Remember, we saw him. It was the same play Chase got hurt on in the Friday night preseason game against the Browns, where he had the stinger. We saw Fedarian running, and then he kind of came up lame, and then he started running again, and then he hobbled off the field. And he went back in the game after that, but it ended up being a calf strain, and so he did not practice on Sunday. Chase got some indie work on Sunday. No team drills, but he did get some individual work in. And Logan was still out with the calf on Sunday. So I'm not really concerned about Logan because Ron made it sound like if they needed him to play, he could play. Like they're just being overly cautious at this point. Like if they really wanted to push the envelope, he would be out there. If we were preparing for Arizona week 1, he'd be playing. Like he'd be out there practicing. That's what it sounds like to me. But because you're preparing for preseason game number 2, why? And I'm cool with that. So that essentially was Sunday's practice. Really nothing to see. Scout team was in full effect on Sunday. So you can't really take too much from that. Monday, which is day 15 of camp, was a full padded practice. So this is more of what you are looking to see, gauging some of the things that you hear that's transpiring out there. So let me just say this. Rivera spoke on Sunday, talked about some of the things that they saw watching the film from the game, talked about, the offensive line doing some good things, but, needing to continue to take steps forward, talked about individual, and he didn't want to, and he's not supposed to. You don't want to call anybody out individually, but we knew who he's talking about. He's talking about Andrew Wiley. He's like some guys individually, had some bad sets, bad footwork, poor technique. He's talking about, because honestly, I've upon further review, and I was going to do an entire video on this, but probably at this point I'm ready to move on to the Ravens. I don't really want to talk about the Browns game that much anymore. But upon further review, I had said this when the game was done. I was like, the offensive line was not that bad. I thought Chris Paul, handled himself well. There was a couple of times where he could have done some things better. But all in all, I was pleased with what he put on film. If he has to start, I feel a little bit better, and again, small sample size, want to see more of it. But for his first time out there, this year, and we saw him against Dallas last year, it was all right. He wasn't great against Dallas last year. He was okay. I thought he was even better in this game against the Cleveland Browns. So I was pleased with what I got. Sam Cosmi, I thought, was outstanding in the game. I thought Sam Cosmi looked fantastic. And I thought Nick Gates was solid. I thought the pocket around Sam was pretty damn good for most of the night. The pressure off the right side was pretty much Andrew Wiley. And a lot of times when Sam was flushed, it's because he ran on his own volition. Like, he didn't like what he saw, and there's this internal clock that you have. It starts to go off, and you're like, I need to get the hell out of here. Somebody's coming, even though there was no one coming. And I don't have a problem with that. As long as you don't run into danger, and Sam's a good enough athlete that even if he runs into a little bit of danger, he can get himself out of it. I thought the offensive line was solid. So, there's some things they can do better. There were a couple of times where I thought, like Chris Paul on one play didn't have anybody to block. He's got his head on the swivel, right? And he's looking at, center, and he's looking at tackle. Both of them have someone that they're blocking, and he's trying to figure out and he didn't help anybody. Okay, pick somebody, right? Imminent threat. Make sure there's not a late delayed blitz, no green dog or anything. And then pick somebody and stick your shoulder pad in their ribs. All right. Like, go get some ribs. There's some barbecue right there, bro. Go get some. And instead, he kind of just head on the swivel, looking both ways. And then Charles Leno gets beat a little bit to the inside, and he should have been there. Like, Charles Leno was probably expecting help. Like, you're not doing anything. Bro, take the inside away. And, Chris Paul comes over late, but it's too late. And he gets up the field, and Sam's flushed to his right. So it's like little things like that. Timing, gets better as you get more reps. And so, like I said, and Ron said the same thing, like it was not that bad, just a couple of things that need to be cleaned up here and there. The biggest takeaway from me with the offensive line is that it's a much more athletically gifted group. And I know that's a low hanging fruit. That's a really low bar that was set last year. We were so geriatric last year on the offensive line that, it affected us in the screen game and things of that nature. And I think we'll be better with all of those things this year. Anyway, so Ron talked about that. He talked about some of the injuries, and not to get in too much depth with them, but none of them sound serious. Really, Fedarian's doesn't really sound that serious. Chase, I knew his wasn't serious when I saw him on the sidelines, dapping everybody up, and he was still Chase, the same Chase that we've come to know and love. The first guy over there after a play's made to hype somebody up. So I was all, Chase fine. So he even went into more detail on today, in terms of Chase's stinger and how they're kind of handling that. So talked about a couple of things with the offense. Talked about Quan Martin and how, he's just got to slow down. And you hear this from players all the time, when they tell you that the game's moving so fast when you're a rookie. You come from college and you're playing in this defense, and you've probably been in that defense for 2-3 years, so you're really comfortable. The speed of the game isn't anywhere near as fast as it is in the NFL. The quarterbacks aren't as savvy. They're not as good. And so there's a lot of different factors as to why players struggle when they first get to the NFL. That said, there's a lot of things that he's going to have to, continue to adjust and get better at. He's a rookie. It was his first NFL game. Some of the things I saw people talking about Quan Martin, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you people? Like, seriously. I mean, I always just keep it in practical terms. Your first day on a brand new job, and you could have been doing this your entire life, but you're doing it at a much higher level now. Do I expect your first day to be flawless at your new job? No, I don't, as a matter of fact. I'd be shocked if it was. If you didn't make some mistakes, if you didn't have a couple of boo-boos, I'd be like, well, goddamn. And again, everybody's different. Some guys come in and they get it right away, hit the ground running, and you're like, whoa, And then some guys need time. And that's the norm. Most guys need time, by the way. So some of the stuff I was seeing people say, I'm like, you got to be trolling, right? Like, you can't even be a real fan of the team, or, like you've got to be trolling at this point, right? Because some of this stuff was vicious. I'm like, really? After one game in the preseason? So Ron talked about him just needing to slow. He's like, he was moving too fast. He just needs to slow down a bit. And that's not uncommon. Everything is sped up. You heard Percy Butler talk about this same exact thing and how he was dealing with it last year. He's like, bro, everything was moving at, rapid pace last year. Like, he was like, everything was moving like 10 times as fast. He's like, it's 100 times slower this year. Like, I got it now. I'm in the defense. I don't have to think about what I have to do. I know what offenses are trying to set up and trying to do. So I know what to look for. And most importantly, I've adjusted and adapted to the speed of the game. Everything is good now. I'm straight. But it took him a year, It same thing with Defoe, He took him a year before he even made a dent. I'm not saying it's going to take Quan Martin a year, but you got to give him some time, man. Let him acclimate himself to the NFL. Let him get comfortable in his scheme. They're probably putting a lot on his plate because they know he's a versatile defender. They didn't even give him a position. The man's label is a DB. On the depth chart, he was listed as a corner, but if you go on the team website, he's listed as a DB. He's the only guy on the roster listed as a DB. So, cut this man a break. Jeez. Anyway, so Ron talked about that, among other things. You get to today's practice. Again, Ron was the only person that spoke, and that's going to be more of the case as we round out camp. You're going to hear from less players. It's going to start getting into a schedule. We know the schedule during the season, as far as coordinators, quarterback day, which is usually Wednesday, coordinator day. They switched it up. Coordinator day used to be one day was Thursday, the other day was Friday. Now they speak on the same day, which I think is now Thursday. So, we'll get into a rhythm with that. But we were hearing from multiple players and getting guys coming off the practice field and getting a little something there. You're not going to see as much of that now as we start to wind down training camp and really get into the nitty gritty of everything. So we'll talk about what Rivera had to say at the press conference today. But really the big story coming out of practice today was the injuries, and they were starting to mount just a bit. So we'll go through these real quick, talk about a couple of things from practice today, and then we'll get to the Ravens joint practices that start tomorrow and kind of talk about what I'm looking for. And I want to hear what you guys are looking for out of those practices. So no Fedarian Mathis today in practice. So for the second day in a row, Fedarian Mathis did not practice. We were fully padded today, by the way. So this is more realistic. Like Sunday, you don't practice. Okay. And if you did practice, I'm not really buying it because it was a walkthrough. Today, fully padded. I expect the guys that can't go to not go. So no Fedarian Mathis, calf. No Logan Thomas. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Calf. So Benjamin St. Juste was added to the list of casualties. He was out of practice today with an ankle. So Ron said that he tweaked it. This happened on Sunday at practice. Did not finish practice on Sunday and was kept out of practice on Monday. So that's something to watch for because Ron made it seem like it was pretty, benign. Like, hey, it's not serious, but again, he does a lot of running. And so we don't want him out there running around, on the ankle during practice when we don't have to, essentially. But this has been a problem for Benjamin St. Juste. Every single year of his career to this point, we're going into year 3, he's dealt with some kind of an injury that has caused him to miss games. And even last year, he didn't miss as many games as he missed in his rookie season when he had the concussion. But that injury he sustained late in the season hurt us bad at the cornerback position. And then when he came back, he was not right. He came back, trying to help us make the playoffs. He tried to fight through it. I credit him for that. But he wasn't right. And at some point, you got to ask yourself, are you helping us or are you hurting us? Because that 49ers game, he could barely move. And we were getting cooked in the secondary. And he was a part of that. So that's something to watch out for. I get nervous with guys like Benjamin St. Juste who have dealt with injuries. So I'm keeping my eye on him. Chase took some indie work. So Ron talked about the stinger, and he said, look, we're kind of like, this isn't the concussion protocol or anything. So there isn't like a protocol that you necessarily have to follow with this, but, we kind of want to follow the steps of bringing him back from a stinger. He said something about self-reported. I don't even know like what that has to do with anything, whether you catch a stinger on the field and stay down and they take you out of the game, or you come out of the game because you felt the stinger, whatever the case may be, whether it's self-reported or not. I would like to think that similar steps are taken in that process anyway. So as he begins to feel more and more comfortable, gets, all of the feeling back, he'll be fine. It sounds like he'll be fine. And like I said, he took indie work on Sunday, took some indie work on Monday, stayed out of the team drills. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not tripping. My question is, will he be able to participate in these joint practices? Because Ron was asked today about some guys potentially sitting out these joint practices, knowing that they've got some ailments and, not wanting to put them through these rigorous joint practices because they're going to go after it pretty hard these next 2 days. And he said, yeah, we're going to have some guys that, aren't going to participate. Chase may be one of them. We'll see. And I'm not tripping about it, honestly. So Cosme had a hyperextension of his left knee, or of his knee, today at practice. But he returned to practice after going into the, blue tent, having it looked at, or I don't know if they have a blue tent in practice or not. Going off on the side with the trainers, having them take a look at it. They put a sleeve on his knee. The pain kind of subsided a bit, and he was able to return to practice and finish out practice with what Ron termed no setbacks and no, signs of anything holding him back. But y'all know how this works. When an injury like that is sustained, and this is not the first time Sam Cosmi has had a hyperextended knee. So again, I worry about guys like him and Benjamin St-Juste who have not been able to stay healthy for each of their first 2 seasons. I worry about these guys when they have injuries like this, especially when it's an injury that they've had before. Cosmi has missed time with a hyperextended knee before. Benjamin St-Juste has missed time before with an ankle injury. So I get nervous when I hear about these guys having injuries that they've had before and missed time. And there are different degrees to a hyperextension. And so you have that adrenaline pumping and flowing when you're at practice, you're out competing, you're able to get through the practice. We've seen guys get through a game because that adrenaline is going, and then their body settles down, the blood settles, the swelling sets in, and then the next day they can barely move. Or after the game, you see them with a walking boot on, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what the hell? It happens all the time. That's how the human body works. So I'm not going to be so quick to just, he finished practice, he'll be fine. Fedarian Mathis came back in the game after his calf strain, and now he hasn't practiced in the last 2 days, right? So it's the same thing, I'm just going to keep my eye on Sam. Let's hope that we get to these joint practices over the next 2 days, and he's out there. That's my hope. Sam was, the crowd behind him was asking him, was he okay? Gave him the thumbs up. The last guy to do that was actually okay in Emmanuel Forbes. So let's hope that history repeats itself, and Sam's out there tomorrow and Wednesday, and no worse for the wear, and is able to come through that feeling good. That's the hope. Another casualty at practice today, Antonio Gibson, AG, left practice with an athletic trainer with a limp. And there was no update because Ron didn't even know it happened. So, and again, Ron's out there. There's so much going on. There's multiple fields. There's different position groups on different portions of the field. Ron could have been all the way at the other end of the field at a different field. The linebackers and running backs could have been practicing something on their field, and something could have happened, and AG could have walked off, and Ron could have been all the way over here with the offensive lineman. Right. So you can't say, Ron doesn't know what's going on. It's a lot going on at practice. So all I know is there's no update, and we just got to wait and see what's the situation with him. I like what I saw out of Chris Rodriguez, but there's nobody else on the roster that can do what they have in store for Antonio Gibson. There isn't one guy. You may be able to divvy up his responsibilities amongst 2 or 3 different dudes, but he brings a little bit different flavor to the table. And if something's awry with him, that could be problematic for us. So let's hope that he's okay. So as you can see, a number of injuries starting to pile up. I will say that finally, Sadiq Charles is fully back. He split, and this is the first time that they've had a padded practice where he's actually taken reps with the first team during team drills. So we've heard him working in with the ones, during indie periods. Every time it was a padded practice, Chris Paul was taking the reps with the ones, and he'd be over there off to the side. He actually split reps with him on Sunday during the walkthrough, and then again with the padded practice today. So, and I told you, I think they still want to start. Like Sadiq Charles is, I think, still in the driver's seat. Like they're going to give him every opportunity to make it happen. So, if he can stay healthy and he can show and prove, he'll have an opportunity to be your week 1 starter still, despite missing a significant amount of camp with a calf strain, and really giving Chris Paul life, because he had a stranglehold on that left guard position. Sadiq Charles, all he had to do was stay healthy and not throw up all over himself. But that's been his bugaboo his entire career here in Washington. It's health. So if he can get back on the field, stay on the field, and perform well, I think it's still his job to lose. So he was back out there with the ones, splitting time with Chris Paul. Paul had to go in at right guard when Cosme left the field temporarily with his hyperextended knee. So I've already told you, the only primary guard backup that we have on this roster, which is dangerous. It's actually pretty scary when you think about it. And Ron today talked about the depth of the O-line and how he likes the depth. Bullshit. Okay, this was the thing that I told you guys about all season, and as we got closer to camp, I said I don't think they did enough on the offensive line, because the guys that they selected in the 3rd and 4th round, those aren't guys that are going to help you right away. You know, like Braden Daniels always felt like a project. You can't take a guy in the 4th round as a project when you're in a do or die situation as a coach. Like, that's on Ron. You know, if you're trying to win this year, you can't spend a 4th round pick on a project left tackle, right tackle, right? Oh, let's kick him inside the guard and see if he can help us there. Like, no, you can't do that. And they did. So I hope it doesn't come back to haunt them, because, you know, because you got guys on the line. Cosme can play, you know, right tackle, right guard, left guard if need be. Wiley can play right tackle, right guard, left guard if need be. Because you have guys on the line, and even in a pinch, Nick Gates can play all 3 interior offensive line positions. Because you have that, it may allow you to circumvent some of the issues. But again, what if Cosme's playing his ass off at, you know, right guard? Are you going to really want to move him? What if Wiley's playing really well at right tackle? And I know that seems far-fetched right now after seeing what you saw on Friday night, but what if he's playing really well at right tackle? Are you going to move him? Put Cornelius Lucas in and move him to guard? Are you going to play musical chairs? I mean, you know Cole Luke is going to come in and give you quality snaps. It's not like you're weakening the position, but if Wiley's there, if it's not broke, you don't want to fix it, right? So that whoever doesn't win the left guard battle is really your primary guard backup. And then everybody else behind that guy is not a guard by trade, essentially. Like, Trenton Scott can play guard, but he's really a tackle. Tyler Larson can play guard, but he's really a center. Ricky Stromberg, I guess he can play guard, but he's really a center. You see what I'm saying? So anyway, and maybe they do something at the end of, you know, camp when they cut the roster down to 53. One of these other teams out here releases a guy that they're intrigued by, and they bring him in to fill out their roster. I mean, that's possible too. Like, they don't have to be done on the offensive line, especially if problems persist or they have some injury concerns and they feel like they need more depth. There are ways they can handle this. But again, it'll come at the expense of somebody that you may not want to cut, but you may have to because of the numbers. So anyway, I digress. This is how you know we banged up, man. You know your shit is not right when even one of your coaches is on the shelf. That's right. Offensive line coach Travell Wharton threw out his back at practice last week, and it required him to have, and I hate when people say this, minor surgery. What the hell is minor surgery? Any surgery to me is major surgery. You're inside of my body. Pause. If that requires a pause. There's nothing minor about that surgery to me. But Travell Wharton is going to be out for a little while. So even our coaches can't avoid the injury bug right now. I laugh to stop from crying, because this is no laughing matter. We gotta. None of these are serious, thank God. And so from that standpoint, and I told you I talked to the IR, and we all good on that front. But these knickknackers could turn in, and this is why they're being cautious. These knickknackers could turn into something really serious if they're not treated properly. So anyway, couple of tidbits from practice on today. So Sam threw a pick to Jeremy Reeves today. He was going for Cole Turner, who's 6'5", 6'6", and he threw it too high. So what I've noticed with Sam is when he misses high, which is the worst thing you can do. Because when you miss high, just like Jeremy Reeves got a pick in the game on Friday. Why? Because the ball was high, it sailed over the receiver's head and went right to the safety. That's exactly how Jeremy Reeves got this pick. Just like in the game, I don't know why I'm blanking on my man name, number 35. That's how he got the pick. Because it went right over the receiver's head, right to the safety, and he caught it. So that's the only thing I worry about with Sam sometimes. Even the Jahan Dotson pass, that wasn't a great pass. Now, I watched QB School with JT O'Sullivan. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch that. Somebody sent me the link to that, and I checked it out. And JT does a pretty good job of breaking stuff down. So, which I had told you guys that was not a great throw. It was a great catch. Now, Jahan's not the biggest guy in the world, but JT made a great point. And he said, that's a route that you got to have an understanding about how that receiver is going to run it. And it looked like Sam was expecting him to carry it up the field, and it looked like Jahan kind of came out flat, and that's why the ball looked like it was high, right? So that's a communication thing. That's reps. That's you knowing what your receiver is going to do, how he's going to run that route. Because Jahan broke the dude off, and he kind of flattened it out a little bit, and I think Sam thought he was going to kind of take it towards the pylon, and he kind of took it towards out of bounds. So that kind of miscommunication led to the ball kind of sailing, what appeared to sail, but I think it just was Sam thought he was going to do one thing, Jahan did something else, and they just got to get on the same page. And so Jahan makes a great catch. All is forgiven, but you want that to be a much cleaner situation in the future. So, and that's what JT O'Sullivan pretty much said. So I don't chalk that up to Sam just missing high on that one. I truly just believe that there was a miscommunication on how that route was run, how he was going to come out of that break after, giving that safety a little, little dandruff, a little head and shoulders. I do see Sam sometimes missing high. So I'd like to see him clean that up a little bit. But all in all, another solid day. The last 2 days, as a matter of fact, were really solid days for Sam. Continuing to strengthen that connection with Jahan Dotson. Percy Butler was the one with the interception on Friday. He's starting to really get into a groove with Jahan Dotson. I think that's going to be a dangerous connection. Obviously, Terry's going to be a problem. Curtis, Diami, all of those guys, and the tight end. We talked about all those things. Jamin Davis had a really solid practice today. I was really disappointed in the linebackers in particular last game because, and Ron literally, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see or listen to Ron after the game. Right, without him even watching film, Ron, and I said the same thing to you guys right after the game because you could see it on television that guys were taking wrong, pursuit angles, and they were hitting gaps behind plays, right? Like if you're gonna do that, you better be running a 4-3 and you better get there. If you're gonna play behind the block and you're gonna try to get something from behind, you better get there because if you don't, you're going to give up something because you're supposed to be out in the front of this thing and stopping it from popping. And I saw it on the little give to Elijah Moore, the wide receiver. You saw Cody Barton go behind the play behind one of the blocks, and not get there. He was supposed to be out in front, forcing that thing back inside, and that's where the help is, right? He wasn't there because he went behind the block and behind the play and tried to chase it from behind. Jamin Davis did a similar thing on another solid run where you're going, bro, what the F? What are we doing? Why are we getting gashed on the ground right now? So I'd like to see him step his shit up. Apparently he had a really strong day, you know, a couple pass breakups, an interception of his own. So it's time for him to step up. It's time for Jamin Davis to step the hell up this year. It's a make or break year for him. Because again, there's a lot of dudes who on the chopping block. Like if Ron and company aren't here next year, guys like Jamin Davis, De'Ami Brown, like these are the dudes who aren't going to be here. Like those are the first dudes that'll be cut when this new group comes in and they're looking to trim off fat and get some of their own players in here. It's gonna be guys like the David Mayos. They don't stand a chance, right? But it's also the Jamin Davises, the De'Ami Brown. Unless these dudes step up this year, they'll be the first ones to go. Final year of their rookie contract, haven't done anything in the first 3 years. Yeah, you got to kill your ass. So it's a big year for Jamin Davis. Like, if he doesn't step up and make some plays this year and become, you know, one of the leaders of that linebacking room, because right now there isn't really a leader in that group. It's just a group of backers on the field. If he doesn't step up this year, then that B word is definitely warranted. I'm not going to stop anybody from using it. Hell, I might even throw a couple of them in there. I generally stay away from it, but it would be warranted at that point. So, Ron talked about the injuries, and he went through each and every single one of them. You know, Mathis, he's like, yeah, he was a little sore. We're just going to continue to monitor him. He should be fine. He had went back in the game. He's like, we don't care about that, Ron. Clearly, he's had 3 days now, and he hasn't been able to practice, so we don't care about that. Logan Thomas, he's like, I think we're being overly cautious with him, but we need him. Without saying it, that's what Ron essentially said. Is like, bro, we can't afford for him to not be healthy. And not just as a pass catcher, Logan as a run blocker too is very, very beneficial to this offense. So he does so much, does Logan Thomas. They really don't want him, which means this has to be the last year of Logan Thomas. I feel like if you're nursing, unless he has a big year and he doesn't show any signs of father time coming and tapping him on the shoulder, which his game is one of those that is going to age well if he's able to just stay relatively healthy. Like there's no reason he can't be Mercedes Lewis if he turns himself into a fantastic blocker. He could play another 6-7 years if he wanted to be honest with you. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy. Mercedes Lewis is like a finely tuned and oiled machine. Like he just doesn't get hurt. Dude's like 89 years old, blocks his ass off, catches the occasional pass, but he knows his role. Logan could morph into that because he doesn't have a ton of athleticism, but he can block a little bit. But I think he's a much better pass catcher. You just gotta stay healthy. So we'll see what happens. But if you're you know, babysitting a dude with injuries like this, and not to say that this isn't the time of year to do that. You again nip it in the bud, but probably need to go after some young guys anyway at that position. Ron also talked about what he's looking for in the joint practices. And they tried to get him to specifically target. I really felt like these questions were targeted at the offensive line in particular. Ron's like, I want to see everybody in this joint practice. You know, everybody needs work. None of these positions are defined at this point. The Ravens are one of the gold standard franchises in the NFL since John Harbaugh has gotten there. And so we know we're going to get some good work against one of the better teams in the NFL. He's not wrong about any of that. And he said, you know, I don't want any bullshit. You know, I've already talked to the fellas. I'm going to talk to them again. We're not going over there to fight. We're not going over there to have any foolishness. We're going over there to get some work in. 2 good, strong days of practice. I've already talked to John Harbaugh. We've already kind of lined out how we want this to go. So I need dudes to come out here ready to get work in, and they can keep that bullshit here. We don't need any of the extracurricular activity. So he was pretty upfront about that. Talked about EB again, and I was like, Ron, you didn't learn from the other day? Like he was talking about EB, and how he runs certain things at practice and doing it a different way. And, talking about giving him experience. Somebody had asked about Steve Wilkes, who was the only other assistant head coach under Ron Rivera during his coaching career, which happened in Carolina. And Steve Wilkes, as we know, ended up getting a head coaching job. I don't think he was ready in Arizona, and he was fired after 1 year. But, that's the only other time he's given out an assistant head coach title in his career. And so he was like, Steve was not the primary play caller as a defensive coordinator. So he had other responsibilities that Eric doesn't have, that EB doesn't have. But in that same vein, EB has responsibilities that Steve Wilkes didn't have. And so, it's all about trying to prep him and get him ready for his own opportunity. And then he kind of went into explicit detail on how he was doing things at practice. And I was like, Ron, just calm down a little bit. Like, you don't need to go into explicit detail, right? You've said enough. Like, you could have stopped right there. Like, that's a period, right? Steve Wilkes wasn't a primary play caller. EB is. So Steve had some different responsibilities and roles that EB doesn't have. And EB does some things that Steve Wilkes didn't do, period. That's it. He didn't need to say anything else. Anyway, so he talked about that. And here's what I've gathered, right? Listening to some of the players speak, watching the preseason week number 1. We're playing our players on Monday night, just so we're clear. There's been this conversation that's floating around. Remember, I told you guys before preseason game 1, I said one of my biggest takeaways from the first, I think it was 6 or 7 days of camp, we're going to play our starters in the preseason. And I thought Friday night was a great indication of that, right? Defensively, you don't need to see them as much. Even though it wasn't a great performance, the defense is the defense, okay? That was a 12-play drive by the Browns or whatever. It was a long drive, however long it was. You saw enough of the defense. Didn't need to see them anymore. That's year 4 of Jack's scheme. You don't need to see those guys for much more than what they were on the field for. So that wasn't a shock to me. The offense, on the other hand, you need to see as much of them as you can. And had that first drive not included a John Bates drop and a Andrew Wiley holding penalty on the same play, if you negate the holding penalty and that catch by Bates is good, and they go down and they get a touchdown, that probably would have been the only drive you would have seen them for the night. But obviously that drive spiraled out of control after the holding penalty. Sam takes a unnecessary sack, and they have a screenplay that looked like last year's screens that we tried to run. And so they brought him back on the field, and I was glad that they did that. And then that was an abject disaster. You give up a safety with a holding penalty in the end zone. And so they brought him back again. And I didn't think they were going to bring him back after the safety. I thought Sam's night was done. So I was happy that they brought him back for that third possession. But what that says to me is they're going to take this joint practice work. And I've been saying this, but I wasn't sure, but I'm sure now. They're going to take this joint practice work on Tuesday and Wednesday. They're going to take full advantage of it, and then they're going to put those starters right back out there on Monday, and they should, because you're not playing your starters at all. 0 snaps in week 3 against Cincinnati. So you're going to take this opportunity, and I think it was Nick Gates who said it's like having 3 games, essentially. This week is like having 3 games. Practice on Tuesday, practice on Wednesday are going to simulate some situations that you just can't replicate when you're practicing against your teammates and then you're going to get the actual game on Monday night. So I expect to see them on, the guys that are healthy enough to play. I expect to see them on Monday Night Football. And I expect to see them for at least the same amount of time we saw them in this first game against the Browns, specifically the offense. And I think you're going to see the defense for more than one possession in that game as well, maybe 2 or 3. Don't know what the Ravens are going to do. My guess is you won't see Lamar Jackson at all, because that's been their move pretty much since Lamar Jackson hasn't been a rookie. Is Lamar sits out all preseason games. They get joint practice work in, and then they don't play Lamar. And then having their backup quarterback, Tyler Huntley, tweak his ankle or his calf or something against the Eagles on Saturday night, they probably are going to be extremely cautious and probably just put Anthony Brown out there. So I would guess that we may not even get Tyler Huntley, which sucks because he kicked our ass last time, and he'd actually give us a good look, but whatever. All three, they got brothers. They got 3 brothers. So you're going to get some mobility back there, no matter who is under center. However, I would have preferred Huntley or Lamar, to be honest with you. We need to work against mobile quarterbacks because we're going to see quite a few of them this year. And I was not pleased with the performance that we got from the defense containing a mobile quarterback in Deshaun Watson in week 1 of the preseason. So anyway, so that's one of my big takeaways. We are going to see the starters on Monday Night Football. Anyway, let's get into my 7 things that I'm looking for from these joint practices against the Ravens the next 2 days. And we'll start from the least important to the most important. Okay. So you know how I am. When I feel listy, I start listing things, and my lists are comprised of 7 items. You know how this goes. Okay. Come on, So we start with number 7. Behave ourselves. That's number 7. Like I don't want to hear. I definitely don't want to see anything show up on Bleacher Report or ESPN. A melee in Baltimore. Shit goes off the rails. We've done that before back in the day with D'Angelo Hall and the Houston Texans. Like we're better than that. We've grown up. We don't need that. It's been relatively clean this year. We've had a ton of joint practices, and no one has yet to have that big melee that ends up on like Bleacher Report and ESPN. Don't let it be us, okay? Don't let it be us. All right, let's keep it clean out there, okay? Ron has already made it abundantly clear that this is a business trip. We're going out here to get some good quality, clean, wholesome work in. Let's keep it that way. All right, behave yourselves. That's number 7. All right, number 6. Contain Mark Andrews. What I don't want to see is John Keim tweeting out, that's Mark Andrews' 4th catch of the day. He's destroying us. Don't want to see Nikki Javala saying that's another good route and wide open Mark Andrews down the field. Don't want to hear from, JP Finley saying, man, Mark Andrews is a stud. I don't want to hear that shit. Okay. I know he's good. And I know we struggle with the tight end. And we know Lamar loves throwing to his tight end. Let's make sure that he doesn't have a field day. That's not going to make me feel warm and fuzzy, okay? So one of the things, look, they're going to make plays. I don't expect us to go there and dominate them, okay? That is not what I anticipate happening. But what I don't want is for them, because they've been struggling themselves in camp, have the Ravens offensively. Remember, they have a brand new scheme, brand new offensive coordinator, bunch of new weapons, There's still a run-first offense. However, a lot of moving parts, a lot of adjustments that are being made right now on the fly with the Ravens. This is not the same Ravens that we've come to know and love, so they don't need to be getting right on us. Mark Andrews doesn't need to be finding gaping holes in the secondary and getting copious amounts of yards. Number 5. Nothing cheap, nothing deep. You know the old adage, nothing cheap, nothing deep. Make them earn everything that they get. And I want to add a sidebar to number 5. Let's create some turnovers. You know, that's been the mantra all camp long. Start fast, create turnovers. Well, they created some turnovers. I mean, albeit the Browns, helped us out in that department with an overthrow right to Percy Butler. But I got to give credit. I think it was Milo Eifler. He stuck his hand in there, Bolo style. Peanut punch that bitch right out of there. Did he do it on purpose? I really want to give him credit. It looked like he meant to do it. It looked like he meant to do it. And that is refreshing. That's a backup linebacker doing that. So if he's doing that, and again, that could just be him. That could be his frame of mind and how he attacks the football. Haven't seen that in the previous 2 years out of him. Not one single time. But if he's doing that, that means they're preaching that in practice. That there could be something to that, because he got it in there nice and clean. Boopski! Ball on the ground. John Ridgway scoops that thing up. So it'd be nice to cause a turnover or two over the next 2 days. Like, really get after Lamar Jackson. Pick 1 or 2 of those off. Force a fumble or 2. Like, yeah. Like, get rowdy. But more importantly, I don't want all camp long. We've done a tremendous job of keeping everything in front of us. Same thing in the Cleveland game. Nothing over our heads. There were no big plays, no explosives. At any point, first, second, third string defense. Didn't give up anything deep. Nothing cheap in that game. I want to keep that theme going. That's been something that they've been really preaching as well, is like, we got to keep everything in front of us. When this defense was bad in 2021, we were giving them up over the top, left and right, breakdowns in communication, guys wide open. We haven't been seeing that. And I don't want to hear that the Ravens have a lot of speed. It doesn't take much for Odell Beckham to get behind you and over the top. Zay Flowers to get behind you and over the top. The kid from Iowa State can run as well. Like, they got speed everywhere. Okay. So I need us to make sure that we keep everything in front of us. Nothing cheap, nothing deep. And force a turnover too. That never hurt. Number 4. Stop the run. Okay. I don't want to hear that the Ravens are gashing us in the run game. If you got to put the Cinco package out there, do it. But I need y'all to clean that shit up. That was disgusting. That was some nasty work in week 1 of the preseason. And again, it's preseason. I'm not going to overreact. But and we usually stop the run pretty well. And unless you and again, that Cleveland Browns offensive line, that's a different group. Okay. There's certain teams in the league, they're just different. They're built different. The Browns are one of them up front. Okay. You're not going to see offensive lines like that every week. But we play in a division, all right, where offensive lines get busy. Okay. The Cowboys offensive line, when they're right, they can get busy. And we know what the Eagles are about. And we shut both of those teams down last year. Neither one of them can run the ball on us. So I have nothing but the utmost confidence in our ability to stop the run. I need y'all to get into midseason form. Clean that shit up. That wasn't appealing at all. So that's number 4. Just stop the run. I ain't even tripping. Stop the run. And honestly, I want to see y'all be tough at both sides of the ball in the trenches, but we're going to get to that. Just stop the run. That's number 4. Number 3, speaking of which, O-line, carry your weight. Okay? Carry your own weight. We're not trying to drag your carcass along for the ride with the offense. I don't want EB having to scheme up shit around your deficiencies. Carry your own damn weight. We got too much talent on this damn football team at the skill positions. We finally got ourselves a quarterback. Don't F this up. You're the only thing that can hold this shit back on the offensive side of the football. I like what I've seen from the, albeit a very small sample size, I like what I saw from the play caller. Very small sample size, but I love what I've seen from the quarterback. I know what I have in my skill guys. I already know what that's hitting on. So I'm not even worried about that. You just got to do your job. You do your job. Trust me, this whole machine on offense is going to flow. Carry your own damn weight. I don't want to hear that Sam, because they can't touch the quarterbacks. So I don't want to hear that Sam was constantly flushed. He would have been sacked 4 times. He had to throw the ball away repeatedly. He was flustered on this play. Pocket collapsed and he threw a pick because he couldn't follow through. I don't want to hear that shit. Carry your own weight. All right? Carry your weight. I want to hear that we had no holes to run in the run game, no opportunities on the ground at all. We got into short yardage situations down by the goal line. We were running a period where we were, running red zone offense, and we couldn't even get them to budge up front. I don't want to hear that shit. O-line, carry your weight. That's number 3. Number 2, let me get a sting real quick.
New How order.
Y'all know what it is. NHO. No steps back. All right. No steps backwards for the NHO. We just moving forward from here on out. Really good performance in your first preseason action as the guy. And I know the announcement hasn't come yet. It's coming. Okay? It's coming. Continue to build off of what you did in week 1 of the preseason. So really good performance. If you're a fan of the team, you had to walk away saying, hey, look, I don't know what the hell this offensive line is going to be, but I like what I saw from 14. He looked pretty damn good to me. You had to walk away somewhat encouraged by him, if nothing else. Continue to build off of that. All right? Again, I expect some bumps in the road. I'm not naive. I'm not going to be shocked to hear Sam threw a pick or Sam threw 2 picks today. That's not going to, I'm not going to flinch. I'm not going to flinch. Because with that, I expect them to tell me, but Sam also made such and such play, and he also had a beautiful throw here, and he also did this. So I'm not going to flinch. I know mistakes are going to happen. But I can't have you falling apart at the seams. No steps back. We only moving forward from here, man. Every now and again, you may take a lateral step, right? You may take a little side shuffle. We're not going backwards. Go out there, show well. Show why the takeover is already begun. And finally, number 1. I know this goes without saying. I'm going to say it anyway, especially after what we've endured the last 3 days or so. I'm going to say it anyway. Stay healthy. Okay? Stay healthy. All right? That is the biggest thing. We can sit here and overanalyze this guy or that guy or these set of plays or that, those set of plays. None of that shit matters if we don't have our best players available for us come week 1. That is the goal. Have as many of your horses in the blocks when they line them up and they sound the bell and they open the gate and they say, and they're off. You want as many of your horses in that damn gate ready to take off. And as much progress as we want to see, it's hard to really truly gauge what the hell is going on if you got key guys injured. Like, I want to see the vast majority of the starters on Monday Night Football against these Ravens. And I don't give a shit if it's their first string, second string, third string. I don't care. Not my problem what John Harbaugh decides to do. I think I already know Harbaugh. I've seen his work for over a decade. I know how he likes to do, specifically the last 5 years or so. I know how he likes to operate. He's going to use these joint practices, and he's probably not going to play his starters on Monday. Now, he didn't play them on Friday or Saturday against the Eagles. Think he'd like to take an opportunity to see what these guys look like against some live bullets. Not going to play him in the third preseason game, not after what happened to J.K. Dobbins against us 2 years ago. So you know they're not playing in the third preseason game. He might give him a little work. I doubt it. I haven't seen Lamar Jackson in the preseason in like 3 years. I doubt it. I don't care. It's not my problem. Our job is to go out and dominate whomever they put on the damn field. So, got to stay healthy, though. Got to. All right. So, those are my 7 things that I'll be looking for with these joint practices over the next 2 days with the Baltimore Ravens. So, let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. I want to say thank you to everybody out there that's repping the kid, holding me down, and devoting a little time tonight to check out the show. Really appreciate y'all. My guy, Rob, you. Stand up. Y'all know what it is. We in the building, as always. Been a member of the MOBB for 23 months, almost 24 months, which is 2 years. My guy, Rob, you writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Rob, you? Says, I'm so excited to see the leap from Jahan this year. His route running was elite as a rookie. Got to stay healthy, though. And I know you saw what he did to that safety against the Browns. The route running is definitely elite, and he's going to be a problem. Period. End of discussion. I'm looking forward to this, sophomore leap that he's going to take. And what that's going to do for this offense, you can't even begin to quantify that. Because if he can come in and take some pressure off of Terry, now you got to choose. That's the benefit of having 2. When you got 1, they can still try. If you got a dynamic 1, he's still gonna make plays regardless. At some point they're gonna get sloppy with the handles, give you one-on-one, and you got to take advantage of it when you see it. But when you got 2 of them things out there, they got to pick one, man. They can't have both, right? Like, they got sloppy and put a safety on Jahan. That's gonna happen. You're gonna catch them with their pants down every now and again. Pause. You gotta make them pay. So, Jahan, I'm looking for a big season, and I want him to eclipse a rack this year. I want him to get over a G. I think he can. I'm excited as well. Got any grapes? Stand up. You know what it is. We in the building. Been a member of the MOBB for 23 months. Almost 2 years. Loving it. Got any grapes? Writes, I'm just sitting here waiting for this offense to put up enough points to hear. Think there's been a murder multiple times this year. I'd love to have the yellow tape come out. I'd love to have the yellow tape come out multiple times. Maybe even give y'all some first 48 love. But we got to score points, man. You can't do that scratching and scraping up 20 or 17. If we win 7, look, I told y'all I don't care how they come. Just I take them any way I can get them. But, I mean, how many more 17 to 15s we got in us, bro? I know it was the preseason and nobody wants a tie, but come on, man. How many more 17, 15s we got in us? Anyway, I don't know, but it's crazy. Let's start lighting the scoreboard up, man, so we can have some fun. It's so much fun when you score. All right. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Video channel. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Ron Rivera, with his back against the wall in a make or break year, picks 2 players in the 3rd and 4th round that can't help him immediately. Wild. I mean, the Stromberg pick was interesting, to say the least, but I could understand that one because of the problems we had. Like, it was overkill after bringing back Tyler Larson. It was overkill, but I get it after, because he hasn't finished each of the last 2 seasons either. You know, it's not just Chase Rouillet who hasn't finished each of the last 2 seasons. Neither has Tyler Larson. So even bringing him back, you say, hey, he hasn't finished each of the last 2 seasons either. So we still need somebody behind him. So drafting Stromberg, I get it, because you're 1 play away from Larson being in the game, and he hasn't finished the season in 2 years. So I get Stromberg. The one that baffles me, and I told you I wasn't really feeling the pick when we made it, but I'm like, they see something in him that I don't, because I looked at him, I said, he's a developmental type guy, was Braden Daniels in the 4th. That one was a head scratcher for me, because you never attacked linebacker. You could have went in a number of ways. I still wanted another quarterback selected, right? Because this is a 1-year rental with Jacoby Brissett. You could have taken, you see DTR eating shit up, like, you could have drafted him, right? Like, I don't want to play that game, right? But there were other guys available at the time of that pick that would have made a lot more sense than what they ultimately did. But even DTR isn't going to help you this year. You know what I'm saying? With Jacoby Brissett on the roster. But I could have thought of a million things they could have done with that pick than take a guy that probably isn't going to help you. But all of this is a moot point if he wins and is back next year. Everything that we are talking about now is a moot point, because then Braden Daniels, if no one snatches him up off of your practice squad, might be in the mix next year. Like a Chris Paul, for instance, who was a 7th round pick last year. He's in the mix this year, right? Braden Daniels could be in the mix next year. We'll see. But yeah, that is wild. I agree. The 3rd, Ricky, I'm cool with that, because we've gone 4 or 5 centers deep the last 2-3 years. The last 2 years in particular. Braden Daniels, that one's a stretch for me. That one doesn't make a ton of sense for me. But again, what can you do? Somebody put it this way to me. They said, just look at your last 2 4th round picks prior to this year, and that puts everything in its proper context. Now, those guys made the team, right? Those guys made the team, but what did we get out of Percy Butler last year other than, outstanding special teams play? He contributed in some way, shape, or form, but he wasn't a key contributor on defense. But he contributed. You're probably not going to get anything out of Braden Daniels. Nothing. He's not even going to be on the field goal unit team. So, that to me, you can't do that. Not when you're fighting for your job. But I digress. That you know what that felt like? That felt like Kirk Cousins going through the process, right? Being process oriented. Yeah, it's 4th and 7, but the right thing to do is to throw the 4-yard pass and hope he breaks the tackle and gets the first down. Yeah, Braden Daniels might be the highest player on the board at the time for you, but can he really help you in the 4th round? I don't know. Anyway, Rob U, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Rob U, writes, this offense should be able to put up solid numbers, but everything, including the success of how hinges on this O-line holding up. That's been the constant message that we've been continuing to push this entire training camp. Going into camp, after hearing about things in camp, after seeing the first preseason game, they did nothing to quell our, worries and fears. Everything that we feel like we're capable of doing can be altered by this offensive line not being up to par. Howell can be as mobile as he wants to be, and he can be, effective out of the pocket. EB can dial up all kinds of plays where he changes the launch point and keeps defenses honest, But if this offensive line is a continued problem, you can't get to some of the things that you want to do. You just can't. You can't go 7-step drop. You can't go heavy play action fake and try to push it vertical. What's all this speed that you have? What good is it if you can't protect long enough for Sam to stand back there and deliver the football down the field? And again, I think a lot of people are overreacting to the offensive line. Like, this is not what we saw last year. I mean, we had leaks all over the offensive line last year. All 3 interior offensive line positions were problematic last season. The entire inside of our defense was a sieve from guard to guard. And depending on what week you looked at, tackles were a problem too. That won't be the case this year. You may have 1 or 2 culprits. You won't have 3 at once. Because even if Andrew Wiley is mid, which I think he is anyway, I told you that. I said you can't be ecstatic about a 3 for 21 special in free agency to come over and start for you at tackle and think that that's going to be the ultimate answer. It's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. Okay, understand what you paid for and what you're going to get. That said, you can help a tackle. You can have the back chip on his way out. You can have the tight end stay in for added protection if need be. Have the tight end get a piece on his way out. There's things you can do to help Wiley if it becomes a problem. But you can't clean up interior pressure. If you're getting killed inside from guard to guard, you're doomed. And that's what happened to us last year. There's nowhere for you to go. I think we'll be fine. But again, if there's one thing that can derail the excitement that we have surrounding the talent that is on the offensive side of football, it's the offensive line, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Rob Yu, who writes, has Chris Paul done enough to earn that left guard spot? I like what he did in the Cleveland game. By no means was it perfect, but it was a lot better than what I thought we were going to get. I thought he moved a little bit better. There was a play where he pulled, got to the second level, got to the backer, put a body on him. I was like, okay, Chris. Because Chris is not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. Chris Paul is like a legit 315, 320. And he drugged that shit around, pulled, got in that hole, got some action. I said, oh, shit, Chris. I saw him moving, staying in front of guys, moving his feet. Saw him sturdy at the point of attack. I was okay. I was pleased. I thought Sam Cosmi was the best offensive lineman throughout the game. Thought Sam looked to be in midseason form. Like, he looks like he could be like that dude at guard. Just gotta stay healthy, man. But with that said, they really want Sadiq Charles to have a shot. He is one of those guys from that 2020 draft that Ron is like, yo, I know this dude can play, man. I know he can do it. Because for as excited as we were about that 2020 draft, if none of these, because, I mean, if Chase isn't back, that 2020 draft is looking real sus. You know? It's looking real sus. Cam Curl might be one of the few dudes left from that draft. You think about it. If Chase isn't here, I don't think we had a second rounder that year. My guess is you traded that for, to get back up into the first round and select Montez Sweat in 19. So you probably didn't have a second rounder in 20. Third rounder was Antonio Gibson. He could not be here next year, right? What was AGG? Fourth, right? Wasn't he the fourth round pick, AGG? he's retired. I mean, do I need to keep going? I don't, do I need to keep going? Cam Curl might be the only thing saving, and James Smith-Williams is here, but he could not be here. Again, he's not under contract after this season. He could not be here. So, Sadiq Charles was, what was he? Was he the third round pick that year? If I'm not mistaken. Sadiq Charles was. Antonio Gibson, Sadiq Charles, somewhere in that mix. Were they both third rounders? Or was Sadiq a fourth rounder and AGG a fourth rounder as well? Whatever the case may be, that draft could go south really quickly. So I think he's trying to once and for all prove that Sadiq can play and give him some more substance in that 2020 draft. So I think he's going to give him every opportunity to win that job. But I think right now Chris Paul has the leg up. He's been the more consistent. He's been the one taking most of the reps. And I thought he played well. I thought he showed that this isn't too big for him. This opportunity isn't something that, he isn't trying to take advantage of. We'll see what Sadiq is able to do now that he's getting back into the mix. Because Sadiq, you say what you want. I know a lot of y'all are down on Sadiq. Sadiq's a hell of an athlete. Sadiq can move. There's things Sadiq can do that Chris Paul can't do. So if he can just stay healthy, there's a real opportunity for Sadiq to upgrade this offensive line with his athleticism and his movement skills. But again, we can talk about all the talent that Sadiq has and all of his abilities and this, that, and the third. It doesn't matter. The best ability is availability. I don't think he's won that spot yet. That's why it wasn't one of my 7 takeaways from the Browns game, even though I thought he played well enough to give himself the leg up in that competition. I left that one alone because I really, truly believe they're going to give Sadiq every opportunity to win that job. Chris Paul, I don't know if he wins this by decision. He is going to have to knock Sadiq Charles out. You may think he's winning this thing on the scorecards, and they're like, nah, I got it going the other way. And you're like, how? We weren't watching the same fight. We'll see what happens. Red Wing 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Red Wing 01 writes, some running back news. Dalvin Cook is now a Jet. Nice to see a GM who gives A-Rod some help. I mean, they're loaded. I mean, and they spent, like, this reminds me like of the Rams 2 years ago when they pushed all their chips to the center of the table. They traded for a bunch of guys. As you know, signed Odell Beckham Jr., traded for Von Miller, traded for Matthew Stafford. They had traded for Ramsey the year before. Like, they were pushing it, and you see where they are now. Like, it's ghost town, but they did it for the chip, and they got it. Ravens did something similar back in 2012 when they won it all. Paid Flacco, paid him all that money, had to release like 6 or 7 starters from the championship team the year before, and they paid for it, right? But the Jets are going for it. They're going for it. Zeke is now a Patriot. I knew there was some interest there, but I felt like Ramondre Stevenson was already that kind of guy. So I was like, thought Dalvin Cook would be more of a better fit for them than a Zeke. I felt like they already had a hammer, but apparently they don't feel that way. I just thought they needed more speed at running back. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there's a guy with a ton of speed there that I just not thinking about. But good for him. This I told you it was going to take a little while for this running back veteran market to develop, and now that probably the 2 guys that were at the top of that market in Zeke and Dalvin Cook have found homes. Now maybe a guy like Kareem Hunt will find a home now, right? You start to see those dominoes kind of fall. Boop, 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 boop. So good for him. And rip to Alex Collins, gone far too soon. And as I've said, man, death always comes in threes. You know, my guy Magoo, VA legend, passed on Sunday night. So that hit me like a ton of bricks last night. That hit me hard, right? Then the Black Godfather, Clarence Avant, died today. So if you haven't seen that documentary on Netflix, please do yourself a favor. It is fantastic. He passed away today, and you know it was sad because his wife was murdered last year. Some idiot broke into their home, and she was home alone, and they killed her. And you know how it is when you got someone you've been with for 40, 50, 60 years, you've been married. Once they go, it's tough to hang in there, man. Like, I mean, that's the person that you wake up to every single day for the last, you know, half of a century, and now they're just not there. You're heartbroken. So I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did, to be honest with you. So that was a crushing blow, man. So that was two, and I tweeted out, I'm nervous because I know it comes in threes. I'm nervous now. And it did 3 in the span of 24 hours. Are you kidding me? Then Alex Collins, out of nowhere, tragically dies, motorcycle accident. Like, it's just crazy, man. I always tell y'all, make sure you tell the ones you love them. You just never know. It's crazy, man. Crazy. Anyway, thank you for that super chat, Red Wings 01. Red Wings 01. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. I got Red Wings 01 rights. I've already talked about wanting to see how we fare in the trenches against B-More, but I'm also curious to see the receivers versus DB battles on both ends. I'm not blown away by the Ravens secondary. I think we can cook them. If the line holds up, I think we can do work. I'm more concerned with their receivers against our secondary if our pressure doesn't hit home against Lamar. Like, that's where it gets a little problematic for me. And not to say that our secondary it's mincemeat or anything. I think they can hold their own. But I don't trust our backers. That's what I don't trust. So if you're playing some form of zone, those receivers and tight ends will have a chance to eat if the pressure doesn't hit home. So we'll see. You know, I'm going to be interested to see how they script practice, what they try to, you know, put emphasis on both ends, you know, because it's not like they just roll the balls out there and say, hey, go after it, you know, like it's a scrimmage or anything. No, there are pockets of practice, little and things that they're working on, in particular, red zone, 2-minute offense, you know, things of that nature. So it's not like they just go and say, all right, let's just simulate a game. That's not what they're doing. It isn't a scrimmage. It's, you know, joint practices. So it's still practice, but it's going up against a different team. So you don't feel as bad for hitting somebody. You know, referees will be out there. That's another thing. Keep the penalties to a minimum. You know, don't shoot yourself in the foot, all of that good stuff. But I'm definitely, you know, interested because I think our defensive backs have a chance to be really good this year. We're really deep on the back end. That was one of the reasons that I talked about, you know, the takeaway that we're an NFL outfit. One of the things that was really refreshing watching that game is from start to finish, I didn't feel like there was this massive drop off from the second team to the third team. You know, I'm seeing guys out there that I know aren't going to make the team, but I'm like, he's not bad. You know, Marcus Kemp comes in and he's mossing and making this acrobatic catch. And I'm like, he's not making his team more likely than not, but that's a hell of a play. You know, Mitchell Tinsley, I'm like, he gets up talking about it's too easy. He's probably not going to make the team, but I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up on somebody else's roster, and it'll probably make me vomit in my mouth, but you can't keep them all. You can't keep them all. They got to hide him. If they want to keep him, they got to hide him. You know, they can't be showcasing him because he's going to eat. Now, if you're really going to give him, because that's something that Ron talked about at the podium today, right? He said that, he's talking about the receivers. First of all, I didn't like what he said about Mitchell Tinsley, which leads me to believe that it was what he didn't say. When Ron really likes a guy, again, you're going to get, a paragraph from Ron, and he's going to have that shit-eating grin on his face. Like he can't wait till you finish asking your question so he can start talking. That's not what he did. He threw a blanket. The question was specifically about Mitchell Tinsley. He threw an entire blanket over the receiver position and then came back and circled back and said, Mitch is doing a good job. Like, okay, that means he's not making the team. Well, right now he's not in a position to make the team. So then they followed that up with a question like, well, what are you looking for on the back end at the receiver position? And the first thing Ron went to was speed and special teams. Mitchell Tinsley isn't a burner, and Mitchell Tinsley doesn't play exceptional special teams. So that means he's probably not going to round out the roster. Now, you already got a guy that fits both of those profiles in Byron Pringle that's making this team. So do you have to have another clone? Maybe. You want another guy that does that, but I don't think Mitchell Tinsley's making the team. But think he's a guy that can help you down the road if you can sneak him onto your practice squad. But Ron talked about a couple of positions that were like that. He talked about the 2 defensive ends as well, and just said that they needed to continue to work, slow the game down a little bit. But I think we can all agree Andre Jones Jr. showed out much better than KJ Henry did. And Ron kind of acknowledged that to a lesser degree. And so, but again, Ron also pointed out the veterans on the team and said, hey, they got to show us something. And he's not wrong. I can't see those dudes crack. If they're keeping 5 edge rushers, and as I continue to talk about the roster, I keep convincing myself that they could go with 11 offensive linemen. And if they're going to do that, you can't keep 10 defensive linemen. You got to trim off fat somewhere. You can't do that, right? So in my mind, it's 5 defensive ends and 4, defensive tackles, 9 on the D line. And if it's 9, you're not keeping either KJ Henry or Andre Jones Jr. Because to me, the 2 starters, we know the 2 backups, and then FA is in that mix. It's 5 right there. So again, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But he talked about those dudes needing to show something. And he talked about Kaz Allen. And he was like, yeah, he's got a lot to learn. He didn't want to shower him with praise. But he said, dude has some talent. But, we'll see. They're going to give, I've said this, they're going to give him every opportunity to prove that there's a roster spot with his name on it. But they're not giving him anything. They'll roll with Dax Milne. Don't think they won't, because they will. Okay, I know y'all don't want to hear that shit. But Dax still is a quality wide receiver with the ability to run routes, and he offers special teams value, even if you don't want to hear that shit. Okay? So, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Red Wings, writes, Mark Andrews will be a great test for our safety/linebackers. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. That combination of Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson is as lethal as it gets in the NFL. You probably only have 1 or 2 quarterback tight end combos that are better. Obviously, Mahomes and Kelsey are at number 1, but Andrews and Jackson are probably number 2 right now in the league. I may be forgetting another combination, but Kittle is like whoever's throwing him the ball is cool, but Andrews is a different animal with Lamar Jackson. So that's going to be a hell of a test. And I'd be lying if I told you I thought we were going to pass with flying colors, but we'll see. It's a reason why I put that in my things that I'm looking for. Okay. Because I don't have a ton of confidence there. Christopher McLaughlin. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, Chris. Likewise. Says, What do you think is the underlying reason or reasons that this team continues to have consistent issues with injuries in training camp yearly? And what would you do differently? I mean, it's really not much you can do. They've tried different things. I know they did some different things. And honestly, while it's still been soft tissue injuries like the calf, they've been relatively, healthy. The calf has been a problem, but Ron talked about why he thought that we've had a pretty good camp to this point with injuries. The weather's been really cooperative. You haven't had a lot of really hot days. I think the first week it was hot, and then the next 2 weeks of camp, for the most part, what are we on, day 15 of camp? So we've had 3 weeks of camp to this point. I think the first week was hot. It started out really hot, and then we had a stretch there where they had some days in the 80s. Ron was complaining that it wasn't hot enough. It was so nice out, And then it got a little warm, but those days that it got really warm, they weren't even practicing. And it's been warm the last couple of days. I mean, the last 2 days in particular, that was some different type of heat. I stepped out of the house on Sunday morning at like 11 o'clock, and it was already like 94 degrees out. That was a different type of heat. So they probably got a little bit of that on Sunday, and you saw some injuries crop up, but nothing, major. Today was another hot day for the most part. Not as hot as Sunday, obviously, but I think some of that, weather has to do with it. Honestly, it's tough, man. When you talk about soft tissue injuries, because everybody's body is different, and so you have to do things that puts that particular athlete's body in a position to succeed and stay on the field. Like watching quarterback and watching Patrick Mahomes and the routine he goes through with his personal trainer and the things that guy has him doing. That's what Pat needs to be the best Patrick Mahomes he can be. Those same exercises may not work for Baker Mayfield. You know what I'm saying? So you just got to find what works for all of these guys. And it's hard because you got 90 guys on the roster right now. And everybody is different. So what works for Sadiq Charles or doesn't work for Sadiq Charles, it may or may not work for Charles Leno Jr., What works for Curtis Samuel may not be what works for Terry McLaurin. So it's tough. We really haven't had that, bad of fortune, honestly. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to say too much, put my foot in my mouth, but we've been fine, and I don't know what else you can really do. I mean, they have world-class trainers. Every NFL franchise has these tremendous staffs that are monitoring these players, giving them treatment, all that good stuff. You watch quarterback. You saw what they did for Patrick Mahomes to get him ready for the AFC Championship game. They have these incredible staffs. I don't really know if there's much more. Nutrition is also vital, but each team has nutritionists. They have chefs preparing meals for these players. Like, again, everything that you can think of, these players are being provided with for the most part. So I don't really know what more you can do, honestly. The only other thing I can say, in like guys like Jonathan Allen, you're hearing him say this a lot more. As you get older, I remember Chris Cooley saying this, as he got older, he had to take care of his body more. Like, he couldn't just bounce back the way that he used to when he was younger, right? You sprain an ankle, oh, I'm fine in 2 days. You sprain an ankle when you're, in your 6th or 7th season, now that ankle injury lingers a little bit. Like, that's kind of like what you're seeing with Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas 5 years ago, that calf injury, he probably would have been back in practice already. Hell, 2020, 3 years ago, he probably would have been back in practice already. And Logan Thomas is in his 30s. He's one of the oldest players on the team. So they got to take care of him because he doesn't just bounce back. his body doesn't respond like when he was 24 years old. So I think nutrition is important. Stretching is important. I learned that the hard way as I've gotten older. I was never a big stretcher. I just go out and play. And as you get older, nope, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. So stretching is important. Nutrition is important. Pre and post recovery is important. Getting in the cold tub, you know what I'm saying? Getting massages, things of that nature. There's so many different things that, again, for each individual, it's different. But I don't think you can just throw a blanket over it. You just got to take care of your body, do the right things. You know what else is really underrated? And I know this doesn't have anything to do with necessarily your ankle or your calf, but sleep is important. I remember, I know I'm going off on a tangent, and I promise I'm going to bring it full circle. But J.J. Watt, I remember when the Texans were on Hard Knocks. It had to be like 7-8 years ago when J.J. Watt was in his prime. And they were following J.J. Watt around, and he was sleeping at the facility during training camp. Like, this wasn't like they didn't go away somewhere for camp and you're in the barracks sleeping with, a teammate. Pause. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Sharing a room with a teammate. They were home. And J.J. Watt was still sleeping at the facility. And he's like, I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a life. This is my life. And it was next level dedication. And you want to know why he's a Hall of Famer, why he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You want to know why he was so great? Because he dedicated himself. He dedicated his life to football. For that time and period of his life, it was all ball all the time. And he was getting plenty of rest. He wasn't out living, out in the nightlife and, enjoying the fruits of being J.J. Watt. He was getting sleep. So that's another thing. But again, I said all of that to say this. I don't think there's a blanket you can throw over, and say, hey, everybody should be doing X, Y, and Z so that there aren't any injuries. If that were the case, every team would be doing that and there wouldn't be many injuries. So Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, hey, Lou, I'm looking forward to seeing how our O-line holds up against the Ravens. D, and communicates. Communication is huge. That's big. So that's something else that, physically we got beat against the Browns. But what you don't want is breakdowns in communication with the offensive line. Like the sack Sam took, that wasn't on the offensive line. That was on Sam, right? Like, Sam's got to get rid of that football. Can't take that sack. And again, if you haven't watched the JT O'Sullivan breakdown of Sam's, I think he took like 4 or 5 plays, throws from Sam or plays or whatever. And that was one of them, the sack. Like, my read was the running back out of the backfield, wide ass open. But Sam wasn't working that side of the field. So like JT O'Sullivan said, if you're looking at the blitz, you just replace it, right? If they're blitzing from that area, you just throw it behind the blitz because they got to replace that blitzer. That guy was coming from distance. Wasn't quite a moon blitz, as Jack Del Rio likes to send, but it was damn close. He had no business getting to Sam. Sam held on to that ball way too long. And he says, question, why do you think the defense struggles against the run with many players being here multi-years? So I don't think our defense struggles against the run per se. We were really good run defense last year. We didn't really have any issues against the run. We had issues against the run in pockets of games, and that's frustrating in itself because the Giants game, the second one comes to mind. We needed a stop late, down 15 to, at that time, I think it was 17-12. You needed a stop, and we let the Giants bleed clock and get in the field goal range and make it a 20-12 game. That was disappointing, but they could have easily stopped that by going to the Cinco package. They just took too long, right? So if you want my most candid answer as to why the run defense struggles at times, it's the linebackers. I don't think we get enough from our linebackers, which is why they've done so much to minimize the position. Whether it's, putting an extra, defensive back on the field and having that guy come down as the extra defender in the run game, or taking one of the backers off the field and putting an extra defensive lineman on the field. That's been their answer, is to just minimize the role of the linebacker in this defense, because we just don't have any guys that show up every single week that you can count on. So you want to know why I think we struggle at times against the run, is because the backers aren't aggressive enough. Now, this is what I do like with Cody Barton. He's very aggressive, but you still got to be smart with your aggressiveness. Okay? He wasn't smart with his aggression against the Browns. I don't want to take that from him. I want him to, because I haven't seen an aggressive linebacker in the run game other than David Mayo. Like, everybody else is tentative. I've watched years of John Bostic seeing the running back get the ball and waiting until the guard comes off of a double team to block him before he tries to even move. Now it's a 4-yard gain when you could have stopped that thing and plugged that hole up and had that be a gain of 1 or none. Like, what are you waiting on, bro? I've seen Cole Holcomb do that as well. I thought Cole Holcomb was at his best when they would have him mugging the gap. Like, now you can't even have him back, where he waits for contact. He's already at the line of scrimmage at the snap. I thought that's when he was at his best. And I think he was doing that in 2020. Maybe even 2021. But I don't think that the linebackers contribute enough in the run game. And that's why, with the talent we have up front, with the problems they pose, your linebackers should be eating good behind this defensive front. But we just don't see that. So I think that's one of the biggest issues. But again, our run defense isn't terrible. Like, I don't want to sit here and promote something that isn't true. We can stop the run. Like, we saw some good backs last year. Derrick Henry got us in the first half. We shut him down in the second half of that game. Really, I thought most of his damage came in like the first quarter and a half. And then by the time we got close to halftime, we pretty much turned the faucet off on him, And I thought we had a chance to set the tempo. William Jackson III had a chance to make a tackle on him early in the game and out in space, and he made a business decision. And some of that's Derrick Henry too. He's special. But Dalvin Cook, we held him down. Jonathan Taylor, I thought they should have run it more. I thought the Packers should have run it more. They were averaging like 5 or 6 yards a pop. Now that I think about it, maybe we weren't stopping the run all that great. When I start thinking, it was certain games we get up for, like the Dallas games, we stopped the run both games. Shut that down. Eagles games, we stopped the run both games. So there's certain games where I feel like we got up for them. The Vikings game, we shut down Dalvin Cook. The Bears ran all over us. Some of that's Justin Fields, but still, they ran all over us. The Titans had some success against us. Browns definitely late in the season had success on us against us. We shut down Christian McCaffrey, but we gave up a huge, jet sweep for a touchdown. DeAndre Swift was gashing us early in the season, but you could argue, oh, that's without Cam Curl, whatever, But linebacker is my answer. Final answer. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Red Wings writes, I don't know what deal with the devil the Ravens made to be preseason warriors. I thought Philly would pull it off. Oh, well, another year for us to try. I didn't want them to win. I want to be the one to do it. I'm petty. I was like, nope. It's got to be. I felt like it's insane. It's got to be me. It's got to be me. All right. I want it to be us. Eagles had every chance to win that game. I watched a lot of the last quarter and a half or so, but I want us to beat them. I wanted it bad last year, and we just fell short last year. So somebody's got to break it. Streaks like these are made to be broken. I want to be the one to break it. So it's meaningless as hell. It's preseason. Who gives a shit? I just want to be the one to do it. Is that 24? It ends on Monday night. So yeah. I deal with the devil for preseason wins. Nah. I don't know if they made a deal or not, but that's crazy. But you know what that speaks to, right? There's a little bit of luck involved, sure, but that speaks to the level of depth and talent throughout that they have. The drop off isn't as significant with their second and third stringers as it is with other teams around the league. Those guys come out, play hard, and I've said this. I say it all the time. The Ravens and the Steelers, to me, are great examples of teams who understand what players fit their DNA profile. Like some teams just draft for talent. Like the Bengals, to me, are one of the best in the NFL, just drafting talented football players, like crazy talented. Like, how did they get him, and him? That's Cincinnati, right? They just do. That's not what the Ravens are particularly looking to do. They're looking to get players that fit what a Baltimore Raven personifies. And when you do that consistently, it doesn't change from first, second to third string. You just got guys that kind of just fit what we do. And so they find a way to get it done. Chauncey Davis, stand up. You know what it is. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB for 23 months. Almost 2 years holding the kid down. Really appreciate you powering the movement. My guy, Chauncey Davis, OG, triple OG, CD writes, appreciate what you do, young man. I appreciate you, OG, triple OG. Thank you so much for the support. Look forward to chopping it up with you all season long as you continue to breathe life into this fan base and make sure that you provide us with a voice of reason. Some of these Sundays when it's tough, can always count on the OG, triple OG to say, hey, relax, we're good. Hopefully you won't have to do that as much this year. Landry Balbin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Landry Balbin writes, you think Gannon going to send some spies at the Be More practice? My captain's prediction this year are Terry, Leno, Allen, Fuller, Way, Reeves, and Thomas. So there's usually 7 captains. You named, looks like 8 guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope, you named 7. Yeah, those look about right. Were those the same 7 from last year? Am I missing someone from last year? Because I know Terry was, Leno was, Allen was, I think Fuller was. I know Way and Thomas were last year. And I think Reeves was. Feels like the same 7 from last year. Felt like Cole Holcomb was a captain one year. I don't know if that was last year or not. But I feel like those were the same guys from last year. And you know what? I'm curious now. I'm going to look it up. You started something. Commanders team captains 2022. Oh, yeah, I was right. Cole Holcomb was a captain last year. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 captains last year. Tress Way. Jeremy Reeves was an alternate, and J.D. McKissick was an alternate. But see, this Carson Wentz was the captain last year. Boy, they tried. Man, that was a disaster. I'm guilty as charged. I didn't think he was going to be great. All I asked for was Indianapolis Carson, and I think we were going to get it until the offensive line wet the bed. But that's nor here nor there. Carson Wentz, Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Charles Leno Jr., Jonathan Allen, Cole Holcomb, and Kendall Fuller, and Tress Way were your 8 captains last year, with Jeremy Reeves and J.D. McKissick being alternates. So the biggest difference with yours is obviously no Wentz. I think the other 7 were captains last year. No, Fuller is in there. Reeves. So Reeves steps in for Holcomb, essentially. Chase Young was an alternate last year, too, because he was a captain in 2021 before the injury and then all of the other stuff that kind of happened. So you've got Reeves stepping in for Holcomb, and there's no Carson Wentz. So there you have it. I wonder, are they going to do the quarterback thing? Because they claim that the players vote on this and that the coaches don't have anything to do with it. So you know how it is. If you're a quarterback, you're supposed to be one of the leaders of the team, but you don't have to get a C on your chest if you haven't earned it yet. Wentz had been here 2 seconds and he was a captain last year. That was by design. I don't think the players made him a captain. I think the coaching staff was like, yo, he got to be a captain. We want to make him feel as comfortable as possible. I wonder if they're going to do the same for Sam. That's interesting. No, I don't think Gannon's going to have any spies at the practice. They got a chance to really stink. We better kick their ass in week 1. I know that much. JP, my guy John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Writes, might be going to Washington versus Philly week 4 with my buddy. Be careful. Be careful. Philly hits different. All right. I think you told me your buddy is an Eagles fan, if I'm not mistaken. I know you from up that way. You know, I think you live in Jersey. So you're familiar with how things go up north. Just be careful. That's all I'm going to say to you. I trust him. I trust that you're going to, protect yourself. But I know you got a lot of Redskin jerseys and you might be tempted to wear one and show your pride and all that stuff. If you're not rolling with a few people, just make sure you cautious. Head on a swivel. All I'm saying is I'd hate for you to end up being a casualty at that game. Make sure your friend is going to hold you down no matter what. Couple of drunk Eagles fans, we give them some business like we did last year in their own building. They get mad. You know how that can go. So just be careful if you decide to go. But you know what it is. And we'll talk about that as we get closer. You know what you got to do if you're going to go. We'll talk about that as we get closer to that week 4 contest. Chauncey Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. CDOG triple OG. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, would have loved to have seen Cam Sims and EV's. Oh, I know you were a Cam Sims stan, boy, but he's in Vegas. I'll be rooting for him from afar, hoping that he does well. But it is what it is. I knew Cam wasn't going to be back, and I had already reconciled that in my brain last year. And I told y'all he wasn't going to be back. So I was like, hey, all of y'all need to know this is it for him. So with all the stuff that we got at receiver, we won't miss him. We won't miss him. We'll be fine. Rocky D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Rocky D writes, did you know the Ravens haven't lost a preseason game since 2015? It would be dope if Washington can end the streak. I know it's just preseason, just something to get hype about. We talked about this last year, if you remember, Rocky. I said, I want to beat these bastards really bad. We had a shot. Sam was in there, final preseason of game of 2022. Sam's in there, doing his thing. Diami, remember, tried to one hand a ball that was perfectly thrown. All he had to do was put his other hand up, and it would have been a touchdown, and he dropped it. But Sam was out there breaking 18 tackles, running all over the place, making plays, and he gave us a shot, but we just didn't have enough. So as the Ravens usually do, they found a way to win. I think we can get them this time. I think our talent level is where it needs to be to compete at a high enough level. Here's okay. So I'm gonna tell you what the difference has to be. You can't generally you don't beat the Ravens at the backup game because they don't play their starters. Usually, that's when you got to jump those boys. Like it can't be 6-3 or 7-6 after you pull your starters and their second string has weathered the storm, because you're going to lose once it comes down to their backups versus yours. You got to find a way to jump those boys with their backups in the game, because I'm more likely than not, we're not getting Lamar Jackson. That's the most impressive thing about this streak is Lamar doesn't play. They're not playing their starters. 70% of those games that they've won on this ridiculous 24-game win streak, they haven't played their starters. Like, that's the part that is mind-boggling, is their second and third stringers and some fourth stringers are holding it down for them throughout this entire streak. Guys that haven't been on their team, that aren't on there, they're helping them win these games. It's crazy. And they're doing it against other teams that are putting their starters out on the field for at least, a possession or 2 or 3. And they're not, for the most part. And they're finding a way to win. But that's what you got to do, is you got to jump these boys early. Jump on them 14-3. If they don't play their starters, your starters go out there for 2 possessions, score 2 touchdowns. Put them behind the 8 ball. Right? Your starters play a possession, score a touchdown. Go out there and kick a field goal and get up on them 10-3. But if you are losing and then it becomes a backup game, they're going to win at that. They're really good at that. So, hell yeah. I told y'all last year, I really want this one. I know it's a preseason game. It's the third one. It's meaningless. I get all that. I want to beat their ass. I wanted them last year. We're going to have our shot. And what's sad is because, they're right up the street. We play them every year in the preseason. So they probably have beaten us more times than anybody else during this streak. If you go in there and look, they probably have beaten us every bit of 6 or 7 times during this streak that they're on right now, because they play us just about every year. It used to be that Tampa Bay, when Bruce Allen was here, because he had that Tampa Bay connection. We used to play Tampa Bay every year in the preseason. Most years we'd end the preseason with Tampa Bay, whether it's at home or in Tampa. But since Bruce has left, the last game or one of the games is always Baltimore. And it's been that way. We've played Baltimore a ton. We got to have lost to them at least 6 or 7 times during that streak. So it would bring nothing more than it would bring so much joy. I would love nothing more than to be the team to end that streak. But again, that's just me. Thank you for the super chat, Rocky D. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Fat American is back with facts. Right. My 2005 team been getting paid a lot of homage lately because they're the last team to win a playoff game. Also, the Browns seem to hit harder than us and tackle better. Why is that? You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think I spoke to that enough. I know I mentioned it, but I don't think I reinforced that, because you know what? It got better as the game progressed. But on that first possession, when the starters were out, we did not tackle well. A lot of guys bouncing off of players, bouncing around. Like, what are y'all doing, man? Wrap up, get guys on the ground. What are we doing right now? Why are we bouncing off of players? It got better. They cleaned it up as the game progressed. But that first possession, The Browns had us on our heels, and we did not tackle well at all. A lot of yards after contact. I didn't think that they tackled better than us as the game progressed, though. I thought we got our shit together, and we were really solid after the first, I'd say the first 2 possessions maybe, but definitely the first one in particular. I didn't think we were particularly clean the first 2 possessions tackling, but after that we got on our horse. I thought we were pretty good thereafter. And your 05 team has been getting a lot of love. Like you said, last team to win a playoff game. That's not what you want to hear. I mean, it's 2023. You're going on 2 decades here shortly. You haven't won a playoff game. Like, that's embarrassing. So let's hope that gets cleaned up here shortly. Chauncey Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, OG, triple OG, CD, writes, 430 watching, but only 121 likes. Let's help Lou. Y'all heard the man. If you're out there and you enjoy this content, doesn't cost you a thing, only takes you a fraction of a second, hit the like button. Can't begin to explain to you how much that helps with the algorithm and things of that nature. If you truly want to help, simple, small gesture, hit the like button. Thank you so much for the public service announcement. OG, triple OG. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. I think that might have been a double up for you too, OG, triple OG. Double up. I'm going to just go ahead and double both of y'all up. My guy, Fat American, is back with facts, right? I think tackling as a whole is just bad now, though. Still, our team seems to miss a lot of tackles. Why? Man, it's frustrating. Tackle, dang it. Yeah, I don't think our tackling as a whole is bad. I think there are certain instances where the tackling isn't up to par. And there are games in particular that stand out, like the 49ers game, for instance. We did not tackle well against the 49ers. That was a really bad game from a tackling standpoint. The Eagles' first game, we didn't do a good job of tackling at all in that game. So there are certain games that stand out where you go, man, we got to be better. But that Lions game was pretty bad. Yeah, it was pretty bad. That first line, that Lions game early in the season. But as a whole, I think we actually do a pretty good job of tackling, getting guys on the ground. I don't think that's a real issue for us per se. And I didn't feel that way watching that game. I felt that way early on, very early, but it wasn't a consistent theme throughout the night. I thought that they did a good job of getting guys on the ground. But to your point, and just to speak to a larger point, it would make sense if tackling around the league wasn't as good because there's not as much hitting that's done in practice anymore. With the new CBA and the rules, cutting back on padded practices. I mean, there used to be 2-a-days, and both of them were, practices where you hit. That just doesn't happen anymore. It's not as much emphasis placed on hitting as it used to be. And guys don't want to get fined, as much as you want to, light somebody up. I saw a hit. I was watching the Steelers and the Bucks, and a guy comes up, makes a perfect form tackle, helmet across, lights the guy up, and the official standing right there throws the flag and calls him for unnecessary roughness. I'm like, are you kidding me? He showed the replay 15 times, and this is teaching tape stuff. Like, what are you looking at, my guy? And he throws the flag. Like, and again, they do this shit in the preseason to try to curtail guys, but that's bullshit. That's bullshit. So, and I don't know if you guys know this, but if you pick up a personal foul penalty in a game for unnecessary roughness or helmet-to-helmet contact, you get fined for those. So nobody's trying to lose money. So I think that plays a bit of that factors into it as well sometimes. But I don't think our tackling is that bad, to be honest. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I know we say stuff about our O-line, but it seems O-line play has deteriorated as well. A lot of teams have mediocre to bad O-line now. Weird game now. So on that note, I think what has happened with a lot of teams in the offensive line, one, I think offensive linemen, that's the position where guys get hurt the most. It's the easiest because you could be doing your job, minding your business, and somebody just rolls up on your leg while you're blocking somebody. So you see that happen far too often with the offensive lineman. You're just doing your job, minding your business, and somebody falls to the ground, rolls up on the back of your leg, and now you done tore your ACL or your Achilles is gone, and you didn't even do shit, or you hyperextended your knee. You're blocking somebody, and that's why you always worry about receivers when they're stalk blocking out there. You just hope they get their legs out of the way because here comes trouble, right? Linemen don't have that liberty to jump out of the way. They got to finish their blocks. So you see a lot of that. And the depth is the problem with offensive line. It's that the depth is just not great. And then I'll take it a step further. A lot of teams don't invest a ton of draft capital on the offensive line because a lot of teams view the offensive line like how teams view the running back position. Oh, I can find a guard anywhere. Undrafted, 5th round. I can find a center anywhere. 6th round, day 3, I can find a tackle anywhere. Charles Leno is a 7th round pick, right? Like a lot of teams feel like we can just get by with a guy, And so the teams that have the best offenses are the ones that invest, whether it's resources, time, energy. I mean, you look at Jordan Mailata for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, he was a 7th round pick, ex-rugby player. But you know what? They invested like 2 years in that dude, just working with him. And now look at him. And then already paid him, read up with him. And he's one of the better tackles in football, right? Like they spent time with this dude. They poured in the energy, not just spending a high level draft pick on him, but they poured in time to developing him and turning him into what he has evolved into, And a lot of teams don't do that with linemen. They lose patience with these guys. They don't spend 2-3 years with that player, developing him and turning him into a stud. They want to see immediate dividends being paid, and if they don't, they move on to the next guy. So I think it's a number of contributing factors. But the teams that spend resources, albeit free agent dollars or draft picks, those are the offensive lines that generally the Eagles, the Titans, the Browns, the 49ers, these are offensive lines that consistently pour resources into the line, whether it's spending money in free agency or draft picks. The Titans just drafted another 1st round offensive lineman. Like, go look at how many times they've spent 1st or 2nd round picks or 1st or 2nd day picks on offensive linemen over the last 4 or 5 years. They do it routinely. And they did it again this year, picking Peter Skoronski. So, when you invest in your line, you get what you pour into it. We haven't drafted an O lineman in the 1st round since Brandon Sheriff. What was that? 15, right? 14 or 15 was Sheriff. One of the two, right? And I dare you to I think Trent was the one before him. And before Trent, I don't think we had spent a 1st round pick on an offensive lineman since, I want to say, Chris Samuels. And that was the 2000 draft, I believe. So, again, you can't have that. We didn't spend a 1st round pick for a decade on an offensive lineman. And we're coming up on a decade now. Because if Sheriff is the last one, I think Sheriff was the 15 draft, if I'm not mistaken, because I want to say the 14 draft was Trent Murphy was our 1st pick, and he was a 2nd round pick. So my guess is 15 was Brandon Sheriff. Again, what are we talking about here? Like you get what you pour in. And since Rivera's gotten here, we've gone the bargain bin route to try to solidify the offensive line. Whether it's been Wes Schweitzer or Trey Turner or the other Carolina Panther that we just cut. Chase Roulier was a 5th-round pick. He was actually really good until he got, and he was here before Ron got here, but or was he? He might have been in that 2020 draft as well. Nah, he couldn't have been. He had to be like 19 because they paid him and then he got hurt each of the next 2 years after they paid him. And I think they paid him after the 21 season. They paid him after the 20 season. And he got hurt in 21 and 22. So if you're paying him after the 20 season, he had to be in the 17 draft, 17, 18, 19, 20. So he had to either be in the 17 or the 18 draft, probably the 17 draft. So he was here long before Ron got here, but I digress. I can tell you that we haven't done enough on the offensive line. I don't even think we've spent a 2nd-round pick. Cosme was a 2nd-round pick. That's the highest that we've spent on the offensive lineman, not named Brandon Sheriff. So we've done the 3rd-round thing to death. Jaron Christian, I think, was a 3rd-round pick. Sadiq Charles, I think, was a 3rd-round pick. He might have been a 4th-round pick. But we've done the 3rd, 4th-round pick thing to death. Cosme is a 2nd, but we for whatever reason don't like investing in the 1st round. I think if Sam is legit, now you know how I feel about Sam. I think this is the year, this next draft, 2024. If we don't need a quarterback, which I don't think we will, I think this is the year we finally use our 1st-round pick on the offensive line. That's my declaration. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, what do you think of that Rodriguez running back kid? I like him a lot. I like him a lot. We were all excited. If you recall, when we drafted him, the reason we were excited because we knew what we were getting. I thought he ran the ball extremely hard and effective, finished runs aggressively, and you could see why they liked him and what kind of a physical presence he brings to that position. So we're in good hands. Like I said, we got stuff, man, on offense. We got stuff everywhere. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Fat American writes, do you think players are more prone to injuries now because of the reduced physical practices? Fewer, shorter practices equals not acclimated well to hits. That could play into it. It's just a different time. I think it's less of that and more of how tightly wound these athletes are. Like, these dudes are twitchy. Like, back in the days, guys weren't running 4.3s and shit like that. Like, you had to be like Deion Sanders. You know, you had to be a freak athlete to be running that fast. These guys train almost year-round, you know. A lot of times back in the day, guys this is why training camp was so important, because guys were out of shape. They weren't training year-round. You know, they'd show up, and those 2-a-days were everything because they used that time to get back into playing shape. These guys are in tip-top shape. You have to be, because the athletes today are bigger, stronger, faster. So I think they're these really delicate automobiles that require specific maintenance. And anything gets out of whack, and it's like a Range Rover, it's hard to fix, specific parts, good luck. You're going to spend a ton. Like, it's cool to drive a Beamer, right? It's cool to have a Mercedes, but let the windshield wiper break. Bro, that's $700 to fix a damn windshield wiper, okay? Like, it's cool to drive it. It looks nice. I just hope you got the money to take care of the vehicle when it's time for maintenance, because it's not going to be cheap. And that's how these athletes are. Like, they're so tightly wound that anything can happen just like that. You know what I mean? So much goes into their training. So some of it could be that their bodies aren't as conditioned as the athletes of yesteryear, but these athletes are much better than the ones we saw in the past. The difference, I think, is it's just a different game now. It requires different movements and skills. I'm not saying that guys didn't blow out their Achilles or tear their ACLs back in the day. I just know they do it at a much higher clip now than they ever did back in the day. You know, and again, guys blew out their knees all the time, and and science wasn't as modern as it is now, and so guys, some of that stuff would be death sentences back in the day. You know, now guy tears his ACL, oh, okay, he'll be back in 9 months, he'll be fine. That wasn't the case back then, but there weren't as many cases, I don't think, as there are now. You know, so again, I just think it's a different time. The Booty Creek Cheek Freak, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, have you noticed Forbes Zone In? It was pretty damn good. I don't know what that is. That, again, that feels luckish to me. So I'm just going to stay away from that. Keep it moving. All right. Independent Outsider. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Independent Outsider writes, always said key to my Giant season is sweeping Washington. In no way that's automatic. What's our kryptonite against DC? Linebackers, interior O-line, special teams. So this year in particular, I said that we have to beat the Giants. Like the Giants are number one on the list this year. Every year there's a team that for the last couple of years, it's probably been Philly that's been at the top of my list. I remember when Rivera got here, the Eagles had beaten us probably like 4 or 5 times in a row. I was sick of it. And I declared that we were going to win. I guaranteed victory, and we did. It didn't start well, but all's well that ends well. And that game ended on a 23-0 streak for us. But so I wasn't worried about Philly after that. We took care of business. Then, we swept them that year, won the division by beating them twice. And so I wasn't worried about them. So then, and we had beat up Dallas that year too, swept them. For whatever reason, we couldn't beat the Giants. They were the only team to beat us that year twice. So I didn't have any grudges going into 21 in particular. Because I always look at the Giants and say we should be able to beat them. I think that's why I never ever looked at the Giants, because they were always bad just like us. And you just figure, oh, we'll get them. If there's a team we can definitely get, it's the Giants. Now I'm fed up because now Daniel Jones is starting to smell himself, and he's starting to think, oh, yeah, I'm going to pick up where Eli Manning left off and just find a way to beat Washington. I'm sick of this shit because I really, truly believe the only reason that he's beaten us is because we haven't had any quarterback play. And so he's taking advantage of that because he barely beats us when he does beat us. He barely beats us. It's not like they're blowing us out and he's dominating us. When they beat us and he's at quarterback, they're beating us by 1 or 2 or 3 points, or that garbage that happened on Sunday night last year. It's some shit like that. And we never have elite quarterback play. I think that's going to change. And because of that, his fortunes against us are going to change. We have to beat the Giants this year. Gotta. Like, the biggest issue for us right now, if you're trying to attack us defensively, our linebackers are definitely, but again, we can mitigate that. So you don't want to make your living. That's why my guy Red Wing 01, talked about wanting to see the safeties and the linebackers against Mark Andrews, because Darren Waller is going to be a problem. If he's healthy, he's going to be a problem. I hated the fact that the Giants went out and got him. But with that said, with all the safeties that we have and the diversity that we bring to the table with those safeties, you'd like to think that there's enough athleticism, size, et cetera, to be able to combat that, even if our linebackers aren't getting the job done. But linebacker is definitely, a source of frustration at times. I don't think our interior offensive line is going to be a problem this year. I really don't. I'm more fearful of the tackles. They're on the island. I think our guards. I think from guard to guard, we're going to be fine. I worry about Leno and I worry about Wiley. So, and I don't even worry about Leno as much, even though he has his moments, as we saw last year. To me, if you're going to attack us on offense, it'd be the tackles right now. If you're going to attack us on defense, it'd be the linebackers. Landry Baldwin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Landry. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Louie, man, when are we going to meet you in person, bro? Great question. It's coming. I told you, I'm about to get out of the house, man. I had everything lined up. I know y'all ain't trying to hear this shit because I've been telling y'all this shit for like 3 years, but it's real. I had a draft party lined up in the DMV area, Northern Virginia, right up in that DC area as you got really close. And I was gonna have a big draft party in 2020. And then COVID hit and that killed all of that. So, and ever since then, things have been happening, in my life. Whether it's the twins being born, like you remember, COVID wasn't like not a thing until like 2022. Well, my twins were born at the end of 2021, in December of 2021. So, like, that changes everything. The twins coming along, that hits different. Again, I can't really explain to you how big of a change that was for me in my life. So, they're getting older now. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. Me and my wife are getting a lot more acclimated to them and our schedules. And I said all of that to say this. Soon, we're going to link soon. I'm going to set some things up so that, we can interact soon. And it'll be fun. I know y'all been trying to get me to come out to a game. I'm not interested. I've been to FedEx a bunch of times. Like now, again, we get to a playoff game, that may change, but the likelihood is I'm not going to go to the game. That's the likelihood. If we get a new stadium, I'm there. And I've already told you that, though. But that's not for like another decade. Nobody's trying to hear that shit. So we'll meet up before then. I can't tell you exactly when, but just know, y'all won't be asking me that same question 2 years from now. Okay? Just know that. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. My guy JP says, I'm 6'5" and well over 220. I'll be okay. LOL. Fair enough. Enough said, JP. Okay. that'll get it done. Still protect your neck, but that's good to know. Good to know. Barrett Downing, my guy. BD, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Barrett Downing. Right. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB as well, as always. Right. Checking in, Lou. I've been working too much. Keep doing your thing, my brother. Hey, as a wise man once said, never too much, never too much, never too much, never too much. Get that bread while it's there to be got. You know how I feel about that. While the oven is hot, get that bread while it's there to be got. So if they're going to let you get it, keep stacking that bread up, bro, like bricks. All right. Always good to chop it up with you. Appreciate you checking in, man. Look forward to talking to you and chopping it up with you during this season. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, maybe players were tougher, but I do agree athletes are now way more athletic and fluid. Just go watch a game from the 80s. Old boy be running stiff as heck, man. Everybody ran like Dax Mill. It was funny going back because I went back and watched the 91. I'm like making it a point of emphasis to go back and watch the 91 season. And it's just a different game. I mean, go back and watch 2000, bro. It's a different game. Like, the NFL has, just in the last decade, maybe 15 years, it's just morphed into a whole different animal. I can't quite put my finger on when this change happened. I want to say like 2013, maybe 2014. We had like a couple of years there where we had these incredible wide receiver drafts. I want to say the first one was in like 2013. It's like Mike Evans. He wasn't 13. He had to be a little bit further because he played with Johnny Manziel. And Manziel was in that 14 draft. So Evans probably was like in the 15 draft. I want to say it started in 14. I think this was like Odell Beckham Jr. and it's like all these dudes, like Kelvin Benjamin. And there was this little period, this little pocket where all these 1,000-yard receivers came into the NFL at once. And it was just like this ushering in this new group. And you already still had guys like Andre Johnson and Julio Jones and AJ Green were already all in the league and things of that nature. But it felt like once the NFL cracked down on what the defense could do, and you could see that it was just changing because the tight ends got more athletic. You know what I think kind of started it was all those athletic tight ends. Tony Gonzalez, I think, was like one of the first ones. Shannon Sharp, Tony Gonzalez, and then it kind of more, everybody was looking for the ex-basketball guy, right? You got Gates, and then the Julius kid in Denver, and it just kept going and going and going, and then so everybody was looking for the mismatch there, and it got to the point where you were willing to take a former receiver and turn him into a tight end, which is what happened with Darren Waller. And you just could see where it was just changing. Receivers got faster, tight ends got faster. And then so in order to combat that, well, you got to get the defenders have to be faster, right? Can't have a slow, 255-pound middle linebacker running around chasing these fast-ass running backs and tight ends anymore. So the days of the thumper in the middle of your defense, like Levon Kirkland, who's 275 pounds, that shit's over with. Can't win with that. These box linebackers, these brick linebackers, physical, come, downhill, physical thumper. That shit's over, man. And you could see like Dion Buchanan was one of the first dudes that they took from safety and made him a linebacker. And like, oh, he's too small, but and that was the wave, and then you started seeing linebackers. Nope, we're not even converting safeties anymore, the linebacker. Guys like, and I thought he was one of the first ones that just played with so much speed and reckless abandon. And I'm talking about Ryan Shazier with the Steelers. I loved watching him play. Obviously, it was that reckless abandon that, damn near paralyzed him. But he was undersized, but he was fast as shit and he was physical. And it didn't matter that he was undersized because he played such a physical brand of football. So the league is just different now, man. Athletes are so much better, stronger, like I said, bigger, stronger, faster, all that good stuff. Like you said, they all look like they were so stiff back in those days. But it was just funny because, LB, Lord Brunson, was trolling. All he does is troll Cowboys fans. Like he wakes up in the morning and like the first thing he does is wake up to troll Cowboys fans, I guess. I get a kick out of it though. So he showed a clip of the Cowboys' last Super Bowl victory, just a still shot. And he showed a still shot from his only Super Bowl trophy in 17. Because somebody was saying, well, you keep talking about dust on the trophies. Yours is getting a little dusty over there. And he said, which one of these looks dustier? And it was just funny watching Michael Irvin at receiver because even the receivers set up differently. Like you go back far enough, receivers are actually in a 3-point stance. You go back far enough, like their hand is actually touching the ground. It's just funny because I remember growing up, that's how people would come off the line, right? And then you look at Irvin and that game against the Steelers is in 96, right? It's January of 96. And he's standing hunched over with his hands like this, like no receiver stands like. I remember when I was coming up, they would have you put your hands like this because that would help you with the release. Nobody does that stupid shit anymore. You know, you went off the line of scrimmage with if somebody dare comes up and challenges you at the line of scrimmage, you work on releases and you work on footwork and you work on, you know, get your hand off me, all that shit. You don't have to have your hands right here, all robotic and shit. You know, it's just a different game, man. You know, everything looks different. Everything is different. Anyway, I saw that shot at Dax. I'm not gonna let that slide either. Back off my man Dax for real. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Red Wings, writes. I'm not making any early declarations here, but Drew Lock looked really good versus Minnesota. He threw with more touch and his progressions looked faster. I wanted to like Drew Lock. I've already given up on him. I've made him what he is, and that's NFL career NFL backup at this point. Drew Lock is what he is. You know, he'll have his moments. He's like Sam Darnold, right? He'll have his moments. Every now and again, Sam will remind you why he was a first-round pick. But for the most part, Sam's going to continue to show you why he can never be anything more than a backup quarterback. That's how I feel about Drew Lock. I think I haven't watched it. I didn't watch any of that game because neither one of those teams played any of their starters. So I had no interest in that game. But I'm going to venture to say Drew threw a pick in there because that's who he is. Probably threw a touchdown, but he threw a pick too. That's my guess. I could be wrong. And he could have just been super solid. Touchdown, no interceptions. Drew Lock is who he is, though. But I liked him coming out. I'm guilty as charged. I liked him in that 19 draft. The Booty Creek Cheek Freak. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? I meant Zone IQ. Autocorrect. Okay. Forbes Zone IQ. He is outstanding. I mean, you don't get the NCAA pick six record without having high IQ, which he's exhibited multiple times, whether it's the draft process when they, you know, challenge them on the scheme and things of that nature, or just, you know, looking at him playing. Like, it's hard to pick a wide receiver screen off and run it for a touchdown. Like, that shit doesn't happen. But that's film study. That's understanding the alignment, you know, seeing the splits and understanding this is what they like to do when they line up in this situation. You know, with that split, this is what they like to do. You know, and I can use that. That's why you hear about teams talking about breaking tendency all the time. Because if you do something all the time, then that other team is going to catch wind of it. And if you don't do something to offset that, if you don't have a tendency breaker, then that's a give. That's a tell. And now you're going to pay for that. The elite corners, they pick up on stuff like that. Like, I can't remember what I was watching, but a defensive lineman was talking about how he knew when it was a run versus a pass when he was playing against a certain dude. And he was like, when his knuckles were white, it was a run. You know, his fingers were deep in the ground. And he was going to take off on the snap. But when his knuckles weren't white, it was a pass because his hands weren't as deep into the ground. He was ready to get out of his stance and get into his kick slide to make sure that he was going to be able to adjust to speed or whatever. So the elite ones, they find little tendencies like that. They see little things. Oh, when his foot is slightly back, that means it's a run and he's about to pull, because he's trying to cheat a little bit and get an advantage to get out and get around and pull, right? You see little things like that. So now this is a pull. I'm going to just follow him and he's going to take me to the football. Now you got 2-3 yard tackle for loss because you already knew it was a run and a pull. It's just little stuff like that. And the elite corners, they look at your split. They look at, your tendencies, how you come out of breaks. What does this mean? And that's why you got to be everything they used to teach you as receivers. Everything need to look the same. Everything need to look the same. Your slant, your comeback, you're out, you're up, you dig, all of that shit. They shouldn't be able to tell what the hell it is until it's too late. And he's smart. And that's how you jump passes. That's how you make plays because you know what's coming. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American is back with facts, writes. True, LOL. QBs hiked the ball and threw that shit as fast as they could like a hot potato. Man, that's hilarious, bro. Running for their lives back then. I'm telling you, it was a different game, man. The drops were crazy, how they drop back. You see these dudes backpedaling, and getting to their drops. Like Marino was infamous for that, backpedaling his way. A lot of those dudes used to do that, though. Elway used to do the backpedal. Guys aren't doing that shit anymore, man. That's not taught. You don't backpedal your way to your drop. Like I said, it was just a different game, man. The fundamentals, the techniques, all that shit was just different back then. But doesn't change the fact that some of them dudes, like you could drop some of those dudes in today's game and they would be just fine. Not everybody, right? Some guys are like prehistoric dinosaurs that you couldn't bring them to today's game. They wouldn't survive. But there's certain players that it doesn't matter. If you stick them in today's game, they might be cheating in certain instances. Anyway. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I feel like our 2010 team is a prime example of having to modernize your defense to the modern offense. Seeing Andre Carter trying to cover, come on, man. I remember when Shanahan came in 2010 and he was trying to implement that 3-4 defense and we didn't have the pieces for it. To your point, a guy like Andre Carter, outside linebacker, just as stiff as it gets, pause, right? He was just as mechanical and, he had no fluidity whatsoever. He's a big muscle-bound defensive end that had no business taking his hand out the dirt. And here he is trying to play outside linebacker in a 3-4 defensive scheme. It was a joke. We didn't have the pieces to make that transition at that time. But, got to start somewhere. And Shanahan was like, look, by the time we get good, a lot of these dudes ain't going to be here no way. And that was the case. That was the case. Abel Ambrosio, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Double A, writes, in your opinion, what rookie stood out in week 1 of the preseason? And it was great seeing Hamlin back on the field. Keep up the good work. Stay blessed and your family. Likewise, man. I appreciate the kind words, and I hope you and yours are doing well, and this finds you in great spirits as well as your family as well. The rookie that stood out the most probably was C-Rod, I'd have to say. I'm trying to think to make sure that I didn't miss anybody. Just off of sheer snaps, he probably was the one that had the most opportunities outside of the 2 defensive ends. He probably was the one with the most opportunities to make plays, and he did. I thought he took advantage of the snaps that he got. Did Chris Rodriguez. Because like I said, a lot of these dudes, for whatever reason, whether they're not going to make the team or because we don't have a lot of, rookies to begin with. How many rookies did we have? Like impactful rookies, guys that are going to play. Like we just had a whole conversation about our 3rd and 4th round picks being guys that probably aren't going to even see the field. And one of them, in the case of the 4th round pick, Braden Daniels, I don't even think he's going to make the team. So, all the other guys, undrafted dudes, they're not going to get a whole bunch of run until you get to the 3rd preseason game for the most part. So I think it was Chris Rodriguez. And I didn't get to the Colts and Bills game yet. I'm going to watch it because I'm going to have a whole video tomorrow breaking down preseason week number 1. So all the games that if you played your starters, I'm gonna watch. If you didn't play your starters, I'm not gonna waste my time. So that game had or you gotta have like a intriguing rookie for me to stick around. That game had obviously Anthony Richardson, so I'm gonna watch. So, but just like you said, him being back on the field, that's dope. Who would have thought we would be here from where we were at the end of the season? And what was that, December? Yeah. Fat American is back with facts. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Hey Lou, good night, bro. Good seeing y'all again. Likewise, man. It's always good to catch up, chop it up with you. You gone, I'm about to be right behind you, man. I think this is the last comment right here. So appreciate you, and I look forward to chopping up with you. And again, hoping that this is the year that we start to make new memories and we can start to not necessarily erase 2005 from your memory bank, but start to push it towards the back and create some new memories in that frontal lobe that you can start to reminisce on. All right. So here's to that. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of the Command Post Live. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Two big days up in Owing Mills, Maryland. All right, 2 big time practices with the Ravens. I'm gonna be all over social media, kind of taking in everything, kind of gathering what transpired. Being that they're in Baltimore, I'm pretty sure they're taking their media team with them to highlight this. So the question is, are they going to be doing press conferences after the practice, or do we not hear from them until they come back to Commander's Park? I don't know. My assumption is that they'll have pressers there. They'll have their own media team there. We'll get some footage, and it's open to the public. It's not like it's closed. So fans will be there. You'll see posts from fans who are in attendance, posting clips of things going on. So I'm looking forward to all of that and more. And you should be seeing me again tomorrow and Wednesday, of course. So anyway, I digress. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow, day 1 of the 2 joint practices with the Baltimore Ravens. Should be some good work that they get in. Be interested to see who practices, who doesn't, and what comes out of these practices. The first of 2 tomorrow, Bart Scott. Can't wait. Till then, you guys, take care. Have a good one. God bless. Good night.